Oh, hamstring. Up. Sniper, take the other picture.
A stinking Browns fan? Are you kidding me?
I don't care about no damn Raz score, Casey.
Scam of the day, scam of the day, scam of the day.
Welcome back to the Zebra Zillionaires. It was a tough one yesterday.
Live from Chatterbox Sports Studios, it's Off the Bench with Tom Brenneman.
Well, how about that? A brand new opening. I just found out seconds ago that we had a brand new opening to the show. Casey, nicely done. Did you put that together?
I did.
Very well done.
And not only that, new graphics.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, we're stepping up in the world here. Stepping up. Good morning, men. Paul, welcome back.
Tom, how are you today?
I'm good. How was your trip?
Fantastic. Great weather all week. We lucked out. Thought there might be some rain. We lucked out with good weather. It was a fun time.
Very nice. Very nice.
time.
Welcome back. Good to have you back in the saddle today.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, how's everything?
It's great. It's great, Tom.
How was Milwaukee, Wisconsin?
It was phenomenal. The weather there was awesome. I guess it's because of the lake. It's keeps
nice
everything
place.
cool.
Yep.
But it was like 70 degrees with some little bit of wind. It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
Nice. And sellout crowds there, right?
Sellout crowds, almost. I think it was like 2,000 away each night from Friday and Saturday. I didn't go to Sunday's or yesterday's game, but Friday and Saturday, great atmospheres. Great atmospheres, and that's in those
It's a great
stadiums.
place.
Yeah.
And Jake, you all right, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Nothing as fun as these two, but I had a good weekend as well.
All right. We welcome you as always. Good morning, everybody, to Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. I'm Tom Brenneman. We come your way Monday through Friday, 10 to 12. That's Eastern Time. You can join us on YouTube/Chatterbox Sports. Hundreds of you in the house already today. If you'd rather join us in podcast form, please just search Off the Bench with Tom Brenneman and you're dialed in. Let's get right at it. Lots going on in Cincinnati sports. And, of course, we begin with the Redlegs. It was a highly competitive weekend, exciting weekend in Milwaukee. Friday night, a blowout. Yeah, got a little interesting there in the ninth inning, but let's be honest about it. The Brewers jumped all over Andrew Abbott and held on to win 7-3. Then Saturday, we saw yet another glimpse of things to come from rookie Elly De La Cruz. If you missed it, then you missed it. Here it is, right? De La Cruz gets a base hit, he knocks in a run, and then he steals second base. I mean, why even bother to throw, right? Okay. One pitch later, off he goes to third, not even a throw. Easily steals third. Then the Brewers fall asleep at the wheel. And give De La Cruz credit. Look at it. He's locked in and takes off for home, steals home. It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable watching Elly De La Cruz. That was clearly the highlight of the weekend. And that was an 8-5 win on Saturday. So then we get to Sunday, and you're in the decisive game of the three-game series, final game leading up to the All-Star break. Ben Lively returns from the injured list, and man, was he good. Almost 6 innings, allowed 1 run. He was really good. The problem was former Red left-hander Wade Miley was a little bit better. He goes 6 without allowing a single run. 1-0 Milwaukee wins it. So you go back to the Atlanta weekend, and then you go to this weekend. It's now the second weekend series where the Reds took on one of the quote-unquote big boys, if you want to call the Brewers the big boys, and they get beat 2 out of 3. That's the bottom line. At the mythical first half close, the Reds sit atop the National League Central, 1 game better than Milwaukee. And, of course, those same 2 teams will collide this weekend, beginning Friday night, at Great American Ballpark. All right, couple of notes, couple of thoughts from the weekend, both good and bad. The good, Joey Votto. This guy showed up in a big way. He had 4 hits, 2 doubles, 2 home runs, knocked in 4. He looked like a player who's been there before in a big series. The same cannot be said for a host of these young players who have not been there before. Spencer Steer, as great as he's been this year, did not have a single hit over the weekend. Tyler Stevenson did not have a hit over the weekend. Jonathan India, 2 for 11. TJ Friedel, 2 for 11. You get the idea. And look, for all of these guys, it's the first big series of their major league careers by and large, so you hope they're better the next time, starting like this Friday night. The bottom line is, if someone told any of us in January, in February, in March, even in April after a 7-15 start to the year, that the Reds would be in first place at the All-Star break, every single one of us raise your hand and say, sign me up for that. More on the first half of the season and looking ahead to the second half coming up here shortly. Major League Baseball's All-Star game tomorrow night in Seattle. As you know, Alexis Diaz is the lone Red on the National League team. The Home Run Derby is tonight. Can Pete Alonso of the Mets do it again? It starts at 8. You guys big Home Run Derby guys? You dialed into that?
I do enjoy it. I know some people kind of get bored by it, but I do enjoy it. I'll be watching probably the whole thing.
Does Pete Alonso win yet again?
No. Why don't we go with the hometown kid, Julio?
Okay.
Why not?
He was right there last year.
He was.
He was right there
Why
last
not?
year. Boy, you guys dialed into that tonight, Elliot.
Oh, yeah, I
of course
love
you
it.
are.
I've got like 7 bets already on it, so I'm ready to roll.
Seven bets?
7 bets, Tom. We're going round by round. Then we're going to pick outright winners. We're going to see how many total home runs are going to be hit. It's an electric factory, this is. I think Adolis Garcia is my sleeper. He's the outfield, he plays outfield for the Rangers, right? I don't know if he was DH. But yeah, I got Adolis Garcia tonight. It's gonna be awesome. They juice up those balls. They go 500 feet. So I'm ready to go.
I love the home run derby too, and Elliot just said it there. They juice up the balls. Those balls love to fly, and Betfred Sports has the over/under at 499.5 for the longest home run, and I'm going to take the over.
I will say the broadcast.
499 is a long way, brother.
It is, but these balls, Tom, it's like hitting like a tennis ball. They're just juiced up to everything. The broadcast has lost something with Chris Berman not being there.
Massively.
I agree.
The back, and he just keeps saying it over and over again. I love Chris Berman. I think that was funny.
I do too.
And then you learn that town's geography because he starts mixing in random little cities around the state.
Yep. Great nicknames.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think that NFL Sunday night show has ever been the same.
No, I don't think it has either. I think if
him and Tom Jackson were dialed in.
Yeah, they were. It's helped make the MLB All-Star Game a staple, and or the Home Run Derby a staple. I still think, and we had this debate maybe a week ago, 2 weeks ago, but I think the MLB All-Star Game with the Home Run Derby and everything, it's by far the best professional sports All-Star break there is. I think it's better than NBA. I think it surpassed that. It surpassed
100%.
NHL. Soccer, God love them. I don't know what they do over there, but I'm sure.
Oh, they have like 9 different things going on.
Okay. But I think MLB All-Star Game, they bring it every year.
Yeah, the NHL one, low-key, the skills competition and stuff that they do is kind of fun, but it just doesn't have the pop in this country that the other sports do. Nobody cares about the NFL's All-Star festivities.
Horrible.
That's just horrific. So bad that they basically had to cancel it. And then the NBA draft has, to steal a term, completely lost its luster.
Yep.
So
I was on the field, the one that we had here, and I was doing the PA for that when Todd Frazier won that. Because Major League Baseball, they like to get local guys. You've got the national telecast where those guys do it for ESPN or whatever it is. But they have an in-house PA announcer to do it. And so they'll get the local guy from the local team. And, my dad wasn't having any part of that. I'm sure he was at the top of their list, so they took the lackey after that. And it was unbelievable to be down there. It was just unbelievable. And then I hosted one on the field at Wrigley Field back in 1990 with Bill Murray. That was before the Home Run Derby was a big deal. They did it during the day. That gives you an idea. They weren't doing it at like some prime time event like they do it now. But it should be fun tonight. The amateur draft in Major League Baseball kicked off last night. First 2 rounds. And the Reds loaded up with college pitchers with their first 2 picks. Number 7 overall, they take Wake Forest hurler Rhett Lauder. Most feel he's the most polished major league ready pitcher in this draft. He pitched his team to the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament this year. With number 38 overall, that's a compensation pick. It was LSU right-hander Ty Floyd. He made a name and lots of money for himself, striking out 17 Florida Gators in Game 1 of the College World Series. And in the second round, rare albeit to see a high school player taken by the Reds. Remember, going into this draft, 18 of their last 22 picks had been college players. But they take a shortstop out of New York, young man named Sammy Strafura, I hope I pronounced that right, Rounds 3 through 10 will continue today and tonight. Well, after not losing for nearly 2 months, a little longer, in fact, than 2 months, FC Cincinnati, Casey, all of a sudden can't buy a win. What the hell's going on over there?
I mean, they're struggling. They're struggling without Vasquez. That's what it boils down to. Their offense is just not as good. They started getting back some of their defensive pieces, but I would say the last 2 games they've started out really slow, like just really bad. I believe the week before that they gave up 2 goals within the first 20 minutes. This week it was the first 30 minutes they gave up 2 goals, and it just this cannot continue at the rate that it's going, or else they're gonna be sitting at home in the playoffs. That just boils down to that. Now I think that when they get their full lineup back, that they'll be okay. But as of right now, it seems like they think that they can get away with it, being kind of lax without some of their starting guys, because before they were doing just fine, Tom.
Yep.
Like you said,
right.
2 months without
they
losing.
They were doing better than just fine. They were they were
right.
tearing everybody up.
Right. And now it seems like they just aren't taking the games as serious. They're not coming out with passion. They're not coming out with fire. And I'm not sure if maybe that Vasquez is like a leader of the team, gets the team fired up, or what that might look like when he's back in the lineup, if they start really playing like they should be. But, yeah, that's what it really boils down to, Tom. It's just they're struggling a little bit.
I mean, they're also still the only team in the league with more than 40 points. So they're okay.
Yeah,
they have a 7-point lead on the entire league.
That's
so
right.
they're okay.
That's right.
They're okay.
But in their last 3 games, right, they're 0-1-2 after a 2-2 draw. Don't call it a tie. 2-2 draw against Charlotte over the weekend. Yesterday, though, was a very big day for the U.S. men's national team, and they played right here in Cincinnati, part of a doubleheader at TQL Stadium in the Gold Cup, they call it, quarterfinal. Yet another cup. Yep. There's the Lamar Hunt Open Cup. There's the Gold Cup. There's the MLS season. There's can I get a cup of beer? There's all of that going on. They beat Canada in penalty kicks yesterday. FC Cincinnati's Brandon Vasquez scored for Team USA and scored their first goal. So next up, the Final Four. That's out in San Diego, where the men's team will face Panama.
Tom, before you move on,
yes,
did you see any of how the match ended last night?
No, I did not.
Because there is one thing I knew you would get a kick of as I was sitting there watching it. Do you know how penalty kicks work in soccer, Tom?
Yes.
How the other players that aren't taking the penalties stand back toward midfield?
Yes.
Did you see anything about how this went down?
I did not see
Canada and the U.S. were lined up next to each other, but they were about 15 feet in front of the midfield line, and they were both lined up together. So one referee came up and said, you need to back up the midfield, and then the other referee went up to the U.S.
One spoke in English, the other spoke in Canadian.
Yeah, and exactly. And they said, you have to back up. And the Canadians said, we're not moving back. And the U.S. said, we're not moving back either. So there was probably 3 minutes where the match just stalled because nobody wanted to move back. It was like a baseball standoff for the national anthem when you have the one player on the foul line that don't want to leave, whatever. So Canada, you can read their lips and you can see them looking over to the U.S. and saying, we'll move if they move. And the U.S. is saying, we'll move if they move. And then Canada retreated first, and the U.S. won.
Naturally.
I said Tom Brenneman would get a kick out of this.
Naturally, the Canadians would stand down. No question about that. All right, this is a serious story in college football. I don't know if you saw this. This is a huge story, and where this is going, I don't think anybody knows. It's at Northwestern University, right, in Chicago. Now, there was a whistleblower who plays on the football team who goes to the administration about widespread hazing or claims of widespread hazing inside the Northwestern University football team. Some of it very, very serious in nature. This wasn't just kind of fraternity hazing stuff, right? Or maybe kind of like fraternity hazing stuff. That whistleblower launches an investigation by the university, which the results of that come out just before last weekend, which ultimately led the president of Northwestern, who just got the job in June, to suspend Pat Fitzgerald, the head football coach, for the next 2 weeks. Now, this is the classic he said, she said scenario. So, you got the whistleblower, okay? A teammate of the whistleblower comes out yesterday and says that the whistleblower told him that he was going to fabricate some of the hazing charges and stories with the sole intent of getting Pat Fitzgerald fired. Now, the entire team collectively signed a document that was released to the media, something like 70 or 80 players, saying these charges are just not true. Where this is headed is anybody's guess. This is a huge story in college football. Northwestern just got finished building, or they're finishing building, this $100-and-something million glass enclosed football practice facility. They went 1-11. They've gone 1-8 in Big Ten play in 3 of the last 4 years. Fitzgerald is an alum. Everybody loves Fitzgerald there. He's like the Pied Piper around there. If it's true, he should be gone. No question about it. But it's funny, we were talking in here before the show. You know, when it comes to whistleblowers, I think we all can agree. Whistleblowers are a great thing in anything, whether it's something going on wrong in a business, in an athletic administration, whether it's in the political environment, whatever it might be. But frequently, all of us are guilty of being all on board when the whistleblower meets our narrative, but we're totally against the whistleblower when it doesn't meet our narrative. So you got a lot of that going on here at Northwestern because Fitzgerald has many, many, many proponents up there in Chicago and Northwestern alums. Speaking of college football, today we will visit with Chad Brendel to talk about UC's incoming recruiting class. Big couple of weeks here, last couple of weeks, about guys committing to go here, whether to go there. We'll have Dave Biddle. He'll do the same for Ohio State. They got that huge sign last week. The guy that many feel is the best defensive lineman in the country, Justin Scott. But we're going to have a lot of college football today because, look, we got the baseball all-star break, right? I mean, and so we don't have the Reds to talk about every single night, and we're going right down the line. Bama got a big recruit yesterday, saw that beating on a defensive back. Both Ohio State and USC were the final 3 there, so a lot going on. But let's get to the Redlegs weekend. Paul, did you watch most of it, or you were listening on the radio driving to most of it?
Yeah, through the week. So I figured out how to sign into the Bally Sports app, which I got to be honest, Bally catches a lot of flack. It was phenomenal for me all week. I was able to listen on iHeart for free, just sitting on the beach listening to the games, and then watching on Bally. I thought it was great. I was able to catch a lot more of the Reds this week than I originally thought I was going to, and I listened to basically the whole game on Saturday driving back from New Jersey, and I think yesterday was the most frustrating because, you know, it's always you got to score a run to win the game, and to just go down 1-0, and especially because of how the Brewers scored that run too, where that run shouldn't have probably scored in the first place. Just frustrating way to end the series. But overall, I mean, good for the Reds to not get swept, to come back and have a statement win like that on Saturday to even the series, and then Sunday was just kind of a clunker. Kind of a weird game going to the break. It feels like it's a good time for the Reds going in now. It's not like they've won 10 in a row and you're going, man, if only we had a game tomorrow. I was reading a lot about the Orioles last night. You know, they blow out who are they playing? Were they playing I forget who the Orioles were playing. They won by I think they were in Chicago. I don't remember who they were playing, but they won by like 13. And all the Orioles people are going on about, if only we could play tomorrow. It didn't really feel like that with the Reds, where they're playing really well.
Yep.
But you lose 2 out of 3 to Milwaukee. Hey, why don't we take 4 or 5 days off, catch a little bit of a break? Your only all-star is Alexis Diaz, so the rest of the team doesn't have to make a cross-country trip before flying all the way back here to Cincinnati to play the Brewers again on Friday night in what's going to probably be the most crowded weekend series. I feel like we're saying that every single time now, and it's wild looking at the prices and the third-party sites for these tickets for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you know, I don't want to sit all the way up in the 500s and get vertigo. I'd rather be out in standing room, and even to go into standing room, it's
sure,
you know, $40, $50 just to get in the stadium on some of these third-party sites. So it's looking forward to another really exciting weekend this weekend. Feels like a good time though for the Reds that they sort of hit a wall a little bit this weekend, take a break, rest, recuperate, and you have a 1-game lead at the All-Star break. I was listening to the show for a little bit when I had a chance. I think it was on Friday when Jacob was talking about how when Jacob started back in the middle of May. I remember we all sat here and said, okay, if we could be maybe 5 to 6 games back at the All-Star break, then you're talking about. You don't want to say success, but at least you feel like, hey, we can still feel like we're talking about a relevant team when we're sitting here for 2 hours a day on the radio. Well, now you have a 1-game lead, and oh, by the way, you only have to play Milwaukee 6 more times. It feels like Milwaukee is kind of this, kryptonite to the Reds right now, where you play them, you don't play all that well because they have such an elite pitching staff, and their offense is frustratingly bad when you can't outscore them when you're losing 1-0. But yeah, it feels like the All-Star break's coming at the right time.
Casey, did you watch much this weekend?
I
Yay
did.
or nay?
I did.
Do you feel like the weekend was a disappointment, losing 2 out of 3?
Ooh, disappointment. I thought that they were in it the first 2 games. I thought they were in it all 3 games, really. That was
They weren't in it Friday night. Friday night was a tail kicking until the 9th inning. It was a tail kicking.
That's what I'm saying. It's like they had a chance. They had the tying run.
They had to play
in
the 9th inning.
Yeah,
Yes.
so they had a chance, right? That's all I could have really asked for. They went into this winning the 1 game we needed to have first place. So I can't be too disappointed in it. The thing that was most disappointing for me, which I feel like maybe the chat and I maybe jinxed it a little bit, was Abbott. He had his worst game on Friday.
Yep.
And I had questioned why everyone was so down on Abbott with the analytics of it, and he showed why on Friday. It feels like he did. I don't know what the numbers suggest.
That was the first bad game he's had in the big leagues. It's going to happen. It's unfortunate that it was a game that's the most magnified of his 7 starts in the big leagues. But, I mean, that's going to happen.
And the fact that they were there at the end, that was the most disappointing game was Friday. But other than that, I thought Saturday was a nice win. Sunday, all you need is 2 runs to win the game. That was a little disappointing too, but there was a lot of excitement there. It was what I would consider a classic baseball game.
Yes, you're right. 2 hours and 4 minutes, something like that?
Yeah, it was very quick. It just felt like it raced by. I sat down to watch the game, and I'm kind of working on some things, kind of getting back into the swing of what I'd missed and catching up on some emails and stuff, and I'm going, wow, it's the 5th inning. It's the 6th inning. It's the 7th inning.
Yep.
It's the 8th inning. Then all of a sudden it was over, and whatever it was, 2:04.
Yeah.
So it goes.
Okay.
Elliot was up there.
Yeah.
Elliot brought home 1
Elliot,
win.
your thoughts. Are you bummed about what happened over the weekend? Yay or nay?
I'm bummed because it seems like the Brewers have had our number the past several seasons now. But
they've had a lot of people's number the last. They've had a nice run at it here the last 4, 5, 6 years.
Yes, they have. Yes, they have. I think you look at the Brewers lineup. I thought we pitched pretty well against them. All things considered, I think Owen Miller crushed us. UC Bearcat Joey Weimer crushed us. Yelich always crushes us. But other than that, like Friday night sucked. It was a bad game by Abbott, but Abbott deserved a bad game after what he's done for this team. I think Burns pitched his guts out on Friday night up until I think the end. He kind of tailed off towards the end a little bit. But even like Casey said, they fought in that game to a point where if it was anybody other than Nick Senzel, I love our chances in that final at bat. And I say that with love and respect to Nick Senzel. I just don't trust him with bases loaded game on the line. But I think I wasn't going to go Saturday.
Who do you trust with a game on the line and the bases loaded?
Elly De La Cruz. Elly De La Cruz I trust. I trust
Joey Votto?
Matt McClain, Joey Votto.
Your boy Jonathan India?
He's better with the bases
Tom,
empty.
it was a bad weekend for Jonathan India.
Yes, it was.
I am the biggest Jonathan India fan in the world. Those at-bats weren't competitive. He had a couple hits, but, man, it was tough. Right before Elly stole home and Elly had the game-winning hit on Saturday, he went up with like a half-assed bunt attempt. And then he just hit into a double play immediately right after that. I thought Jonathan India looked tough this weekend. I don't know what the plan is with him. I know a lot of people are saying trade him, a.k.a. Jacob. But it was just tough look. He can't bat third anymore. He just can't bat third. You're not going to see competitive at-bats. He was hitting great at the leadoff spot. They moved him. He's been terrible at 3. Absolutely terrible. The splits aren't even close. He's sub 200 out of the 3-hole. So
it makes you wonder then, why are they continuing to run him out there in the 3? You know, I hear people make the argument, and I've heard this about leadoff hitters and all this kind of stuff. All of us have, right, forever, about, well, you're only batting leadoff once.
Yeah.
You're only batting third once. That has nothing to do with it in the grand scheme. Well, let me correct that. It used to be that on every team in Major League Baseball, your best hitter was the 3-hole hitter.
Yep.
Okay? And in a lot of cases, that still holds true. But Tony La Russa was the first guy that started to say, you know what? I'm going to put my best hitter in the 2-hole. We're not asking a guy to bunt. We're asking him to put the bat on the ball and start driving in runs and making stuff happen. And the most important part of the whole thing is you potentially get that one extra at bat with the guy in the 2 or the 3-hole or a leadoff spot that you won't get from the guy batting in the 6, 7, 8 spot, right? So a lot of games, you look at the box score. The 1, 2, 3, 4 hitters might get 4 or 5 ABs. The 7, 8, 9 hitters will get 3 or 4 ABs, right? So that's why you have a guy. Now, some are saying Spencer Steer. Jacob, you just said it in the chat. You know, I don't know how much to read into this, but here's what I do know. When Spencer Steer, who's never been an outfielder until this year, when they put him in left field, look, and I'm not saying there's anything to it, but if you're going to buy into numbers, and a lot of people buy into numbers, right? Okay. His numbers hitting as a left fielder are brutal.
Very bad.
Brutal. And you heard, I thought that was the most interesting part of our conversation with Bill Schroeder on Friday. Now, we asked him, not specifically about Tyler Stevenson, but about catcher X, who's been a catcher his whole life, and now all of a sudden you're only catching him 2 or 3 days a week. He'll play a little first base, he'll DH, and his offensive numbers have gone down. Does he think that would have an effect on a player X? He said absolutely. And he started going into some examples, and the one that struck me the most was the example he gave for Ryan Braun. Okay, Braun comes up, you may remember, had played a lot of infield. You know, they get him to the outfield, and then they just leave him alone, right? Becomes an MVP, all this kind of thing. And he's talking about how, you know, he's not thinking about his defense out there in left field because he's comfortable with being a left fielder. And a lot of times you'd see him working on his swing out there in between outs or in between pitches. Whereas a guy like Steer, in this case, that he's thinking about, my God, what's going to happen if the ball's hit to me and where am I going to throw the ball to, right?
Yep.
Absolutely.
So it makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah, I mean, we're asking the world of Spencer Steer, moving him from third base to first base to left field. I mean, no one in their right mind thinks he's a left fielder. I mean, you hope maybe he can figure it out and he can play there and help the team, but right now we're just kind of piecing the lineup together because we need his bat in the lineup.
For
his
sure.
bat is one of the best on our team right now. I mean, I know he didn't have a great weekend, but you have to find a way to get him in your starting 9, and right now that's in left field. With Joey Votto playing as well as he is, you don't really have room for him at first base. I mean, CES is still knocking on the door. You know he's going to play the corners of the infield. I feel like you're going to have to ask here to just keep figuring it out in left, which is, you know, you hate to put that pressure on a young player, but I feel like that's where we're at right now.
Now, Nick Kirby points out that Steer's numbers, he's at 294 as a left fielder. I would venture to say, because I've actually looked into this a little bit, and Nick's technically correct. He has a good on-base percentage, all that kind of thing. But you could really bunch that up into about 4 or 5 games where he's had big games as a left fielder. The rest of the time as a left fielder. Now, and again, we're talking about a very small sample size here in the grand scheme of things because he hadn't played a ton of left field. But look, going forward, now is the question, fellas. Encarnacion Strand. I mean, his numbers at AAA just continue to just soar off the charts.
Yep.
Right? How much longer are you going to keep him in the minor leagues and continue to carry 3 catchers?
It's gonna be one of the more interesting storylines coming out of this All-Star break because I don't know. And Tom pointed it out before the show. Tyler Stephenson's been one of the worst defensive catchers in baseball this season. It's ugly. It's ugly when he's behind the plate. Pitchers don't want to throw to him. It's just not working. You need his bat, but even his bat he's gonna hit singles. And that's no disrespect. There's nothing wrong with a slap hitter, but at some point you're gonna have to hit more than he does to warrant the bad defense, and it's not. So now you're forcing Strand to stay down there because we have 3 catchers. I think you cut Casali after this All-Star break, and you have to bring up Strand. If you're trying to win games, you can't have 3 catchers. You can't. It doesn't work.
Tyler Stephenson's saving grace his whole career was, well, you put up with the glove because he's going to be a great bat in your lineup. You have to keep Tyler Stephenson around because he's a great bat in your lineup. 250 is not a great bat.
No.
I don't care that he's a catcher and that's not a great offensive position. 250 with a 340 OBP is not a great bat, especially when he has little to no power. I just don't see necessarily what Tyler Stephenson provides to this team if he's not catching because he's not good enough to be our DH.
And the issue, too, is I don't know if they were kind of, and this is going to sound bad, obviously they weren't, but if you were hoping Votto would regress or not offer anything, the decision to bring him up and have him play first, Strand being that, I think that's an easier decision. Votto's now playing unbelievable baseball. It complicates the infield even more because now we're playing India at second. India's not a great fielder. Votto's hitting out of his, I'll say, butt.
Well, he's getting big hits,
home runs.
Yeah, right. But he's hitting home runs.
You know, Pete Alonso is that same way. He's hitting I think 220 on the year, but he's got 25 home runs. So there is a place for that on a team. I just think Strand right now doesn't have a place on this roster with 3 catchers and Jonathan India at second base.
Strand is hitting 290 with 10 home runs against left-handed pitching in AAA. Is that not exactly what we need?
We need
someone who comes up and can mash left-handed pitching.
Yep.
Joey Votto can play every day against right-handed pitching. Strand every day against left-handed pitching. And let's run a lineup out there every day that we love. But we can't because Tyler Stephenson can't catch. That's the crux of the issue right now. Everyone wants to bang the table to cut one of the catchers. You really can't with Tyler Stephenson.
And it's ironic because there is a catcher, Tom, in AAA who's playing very well. Big game Chucky. Chucky Robinson's down there hitting 380.
That's your guy.
That's my guy. That's my guy.
And I just want to use this to back up for a second what I was talking about with Steer, okay? He has 1 game this year when he started as a left fielder against Atlanta. When he went 3 for 3, he had a home run and knocked in 3 runs. He has 1 other game where he had 2 hits and knocked in 3. So, again, very small, the number of at-bats, and I don't want to read too much into it. Those numbers are true, 294, 440 on base percentage as a left fielder, but all of that basically has been accumulated in 2 games.
Yeah.
I don't know. I love the kid and the fact that he's willing to play anywhere you want it, right? He'll do anything. Left, right, first, third, DH, do anything. Anything. And that's not to say that other guys on the team wouldn't do the same thing, because I think by and large they would. I would love to know if there's been any conversation down there, and we're not going to know unless somebody comes out and tells you about it. I'd love to know if some of the other guys, you've thought about asking them to move, most notably India, who you continue to be south on.
He's the South.
I know he's South. I looked at him when I said that. I didn't look at you, Elliot.
My thing with Jonathan India, I will concede, is, after this weekend, a leader of the team, and that is he leads the team in ground and in double plays. So
oh, boy.
That is fair. I don't know. Jonathan India, he had another terrible play yesterday where he just eats a ground ball right at his feet. I'm struggling to find an argument to keep Jonathan India at this point. Because, again, Noel Marte hasn't been in AAA very long, but by God, is he killing it. He stole a base in the Futures game, and he scored a run. This kid is special, and I know you got to buy time for him to get ready to come up, but Jonathan India has a 250 bat as well.
I'm ready to side with Jacob on this, and it's tough for me to say. I love Jonathan India, but he has no value as a 3-hole hitter with us. He just has no value. If you're going to keep playing him out there and he's going to double play his way through the season, it's going to get ugly. Bring him to 7, move him to 7, move him to 8. Benson against a righty should be hitting above him. Votto should certainly be hitting above him against a righty. So I don't know. I don't know what the reason is. Maybe it's for him to maybe give some confidence. Maybe it's because they don't want to, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing. But India right now has no value. He's not a good defender, and his offense has not been good. Has been atrocious, really, in the last month.
Somebody asked me in the chat, RM says, Tom, are you trading Steer? Absolutely not.
No.
No chance. No chance. I'm just trying to figure out what they're going to do with this team moving forward here, as we've talked about time and time again. By the way, everybody wanted to run Wade Miley out of town. That guy has had one hell of a career.
Yep.
You can say whatever you want to say. That guy has had one hell of a career.
We gave Mike Minor about the same contract, Tom. We let Wade Wiley
That's right.
go for Mike Minor.
I mean, I that's one move that the team has made, and they made a lot of good ones. But that's one move I just never understood. Miley is a solid guy, solid veteran, takes the ball. He'll have his blow-up start every now and again. In fact, truth be told, you look through his career, he'll have a blow-up season every now and again. But he always seems to come back and respond. And look, now he hasn't pitched all year like he pitched yesterday. But what is his ERA on the season, if I'm not mistaken, is like 3.05, something like that, right? Yep. He's having a heck of a year for that team. And you just send him out there, and he does his thing, and he gives you everything he's got. But where is this Reds team moving now? And we're going to get a lot into this tomorrow. If you get ready for the second half, right? And you got another big – this next homestand is a big-time homestand, right? I know the Diamondbacks have been leaking a little oil here lately.
Yeah.
But they're still in first place by a half game, if I'm not mistaken, over the Dodgers in the West. They lost 4 in a row, and then they bounced back to win 2 in a row the last 2 days. Or before yesterday, they had won 2 in a row. So you've got, in order, Milwaukee, the Giants. That's our big game, Monday night.
Yep.
Next Monday.
Right?
Next Monday.
Yes, Chatterbox Sports Night. And then you have the Diamondbacks. And then you play the Brewers again, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
In Milwaukee again. So one of those is a 4-game series. So you got 3, 9, and 4. You got 13 games coming up here against 6 against the Brewers. And then you got the Giants and Diamondbacks sprinkled in. That's a big-time homestand for the Redlegs.
I was looking last night at the second half of the season and the strength of schedules remaining and all of that. And the Reds play the 17th hardest schedule, so right kind of in the middle of the pack.
Yeah.
They got the series against Marlins, Dodgers. They got 7 games against the Diamondbacks. They got to play the Blue Jays 7 times against the Giants and then 6 more against the Brewers. Brewers have the 13th hardest schedule. They have 6 left against Atlanta, 3 left against LA, 3 against Texas. They also have 6 against the Phillies mixed in there too. So
who are playing well.
Yeah, so when you look at Milwaukee and the Reds and how this division stacks up, I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday before the game. One of my friends texted me and asked how I felt about the Reds going forward. I think he had a future on the Reds to win the division, and he was kind of wondering, hey,
it always gets back to gambling.
What do you think? What are my prospects looking like here? And I said, well, the Reds only have to play the Brewers 6 more times. I talked about that a minute ago, and when the Reds don't play the Brewers, and the Brewers haven't killed some of these bad teams.
No, they got swept by the A's.
Yeah, the Brewers. It's not like the Brewers have gone in and taken care of business with a lot of these teams that they should have beaten.
Yep.
So to sit here and say that the Reds might fall off with 71 games remaining in the season, I just don't see it. I feel like the way the Reds are playing now, the Reds do have a pretty brutal end of July into like the 3rd week of August.
That's what we were just talking about. That layout, and Nick Kirby points out that it's possible that every team the Reds face in September could be already out of the race.
That September schedule is very easy.
So if you get to the 3rd week of August and maybe you've flipped a couple of games, maybe you're down 2 games, but you get to the 3rd week of August and you're still right there, you got to be feeling great.
No doubt about it.
You got to be feeling great.
No doubt. No doubt.
If you get through that
All right,
last
I'm going to say
Milwaukee
timeout.
series-
Ham and Eggers, you guys take it before I got to get to Chad Brendel here in a second. Continue on, Ham and Eggers, please. Continue on. Continue on.
If you get through that last Milwaukee series and you're still within a handful of games, you got to be feeling good at the end of July.
You have to be feeling really, really good at the end of July because the way that the Reds' schedule is stacking up. We talked about we were talking about July. And you're talking about August where you have to play. The Dodgers are at the end of July, Milwaukee, but you get through that Milwaukee and that Dodgers stretch, and then you got the Cubs, the Nats, the Marlins, the Pirates, but then it's Toronto and LA and Arizona and San Francisco. You look back at the end of the season into September, you're looking at the Cardinals, who this was my other point that I wanted to make. Are we set at the All-Star break? Maybe we check in on this in a month. Maybe I'll pitch this back to you guys in a month. Are we set that this is a two-team race? Because I'm pretty ready to call it that. I could hear an argument for the Cubs, but I'm not going to hear an argument for the Cardinals. They look dead. Because every time we want to do the the Cardinals are hanging around, and I'll always come back to the college basketball analogy where, take Xavier, for example, where you always have Villanova hanging around, but this year you just had to realize Villanova wasn't that good, and they just didn't compete for a Big East championship this year. It took us a halfway, 2/3 of the season to realize, oh, wait, they're just not good. Now they had injuries, but they're just not good. It kind of feels the same way when I'm watching this Cardinals team where they don't necessarily have injuries the same way, but, I'm okay with writing the Cardinals off. I'm definitely writing the Pirates off, which basically leaves you asking the question, are the Cubs going to compete? They're 7 back. They're 5 under 500.
No, I think the Cardinals are done. You're 12 games back, and I maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think they've put together a good string of games yet this year.
No, they haven't.
They have not even had a stretch where they're a competitive team. Yeah, I think the Cardinals are done. The Cubs, you think they're done too. 7 games back at the deadline's a lot different than a couple weeks ago. You think they have to sell some pieces.
Yeah.
And then the Pirates, other than Milwaukee, the Pirates probably scare me the most because, they're going to get O'Neal Cruz back eventually. They have a lot of young talent at the top of their farm. Maybe they can string together some wins, but yeah, it's pretty easy to call it a two-team race.
But with the Pirates, what happens if O'Neal Cruz, if they're so far out by the time that they kind of put things together that it doesn't really matter? That's what I'm saying.
No,
if it's, say, August 1st, August 10th, by the time the Pirates start to get a little mojo, it might be too late.
No, you're absolutely right.
If they're 9-10 back, and if they're 9 or 10 back, and the Brewers and the Reds are both there, because if let's say the Brewers fall off and they're 6 or 7 back, let's say the Reds.
Who? The Brewers?
Brewers.
They're not falling back. They're gonna get Woodruff back. They got Burns. They got Miley. They're not good. They're not falling 6 or 7 back.
I'm just saying.
I'll buy into all of those things with the Cardinals, Pirates, and Cubs.
Yeah, but I'm just
saying.
saying.
The Brewers aren't fading away.
Let's say let's say the Reds sweep the Brewers. So in a perfect world, the Reds sweep the Brewers this coming weekend. They have a 4-game lead going into Monday against the Giants. And they kind of mess around, and maybe the Reds pick up one more game. Have a 5 or 6 game lead at the end of July. Might be fantasy land, but go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say the trade deadline is going to tell us what kind of race this is going to be. Who's going to be competing? I think the Brewers are going to try to get a couple of bats. If that's the case, the Brewers would be back to being the favorite in this division because right now their bats are horrible. Their lineup's one of the worst I've ever seen. You'll just have to find out then. I think we'll tread water, have a lead, give me a 3-game lead at the trade deadline, and we'll go from there. But I think the Pirates are done. The Cardinals, I'm a Cardinals guy. You can never rule them out. This year I'm ruling them out. They're dead. I've changed my mind on that. They're just dead. Those losses to Miami were horrible.
Yeah,
horrible.
It was brutal to watch.
And the Pirates, respectfully, the city of Pittsburgh, sorry for what you've had to do.
No respect to them.
Yeah,
Elliot.
no respect. Sorry. Not a lot going on in Pittsburgh.
Okay. All right. We're going to shift gears. We talked about it last week, and somebody in the chat made the comment, we don't live in the South. We're talking college football in July. This is the All-Star break, right? We've been on the Reds for an hour and a half every single day. rightfully so. But I mentioned last week there's a lot going on in college football. The last couple of weekends have been huge weekends for all these schools and bringing in recruits and all that kind of thing. Bearcat General Chad Brendel, kind enough to join us once again. Chad, good morning, young man. How was your weekend? You doing all right?
It was good. It was a weekend full of club volleyball tryouts. So,
oh boy,
Uber dad, just picking the kid up and dropping the kid off at different gyms.
Well, it comes to that's one of those sports. And look, there's a lot of them. I did it with lacrosse and with our son, and then soccer and everything else. I mean, club volleyball, they own your ass, morning, noon, and night. Am I right about that?
Oh yeah, it's extensive. It's not the
extensive.
old days of I played baseball at a pretty high level in the summers, and you just show up, you play a game, you go home. That's it. A practice maybe once a week. Volleyball's a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
Yep. I got a young lady that lives 3 doors down who plays down at Tulane, and I mean, my Lord, it seemed like her dad and mom were gone every day in the summer for about 7-8 years in a row. That might be in your future, Chad Brendel. Let's start with the transfer portal from UC for this year. Okay, now the guys obviously are going to be in camp. Emory Jones highlighting that entire group. Looks like he's going to be the starting quarterback. From what you've been able to tell so far of the guys that have come in here, and look, rankings, I don't put a lot of stock into it because you never know until these guys get on the field and you see what happens, right? You can think some guy's going to be a big star. He's a flop. You can think some guy's a 2 or 3 star player when he came out of high school, didn't play much where he was before, shows up at your place. It's a great fit. He turns into an NFL player one day. But based on all the offseason stuff you've heard, all these guys that Satterfield has brought in, how do they feel about that group? Let's start there.
Pretty good. I mean, especially they got a couple additions late that I think they feel really good about. Xavier Henderson, a 4-star transfer from Florida, kind of was the final piece on that wide receiver room that they had to completely rebuild. I mean, they had 1 scholarship player returning in the wide receiver room at one point. So you've got a couple guys there now that you're starting to feel comfortable with. And then you put the icing on the cake kind of with Xavier Henderson to move you forward. Defensively, to stay on offense, I think 2 guys that are going to make a big impact offensively are interior linemen, Trevor Radosevich and Luke Kandra. Kandra, obviously, the Cincinnati native that spent the beginning of his career at Louisville. He gets to come home. I think he's going to start at one of the guard spots, and then Radosevich is a transfer from Princeton, and my guess is he starts at one of the other guard spots. And that line just wasn't – they didn't play well enough last year. And they're going to need to see marked improvement there. And a lot of times that can start inside. You return Gavin Gerhardt. Now you've got 2 really good guards next to him. So that should help the run game and get the offense moving quite a bit. And then defensively – there's a bunch of guys that are going to make an impact. Dan Greshik is an edge rusher from Utah State that transferred in. He was one of the highest graded edge rushers in the country on PFF last year. So that's a guy you think is going to be able to come in and make some plays for you. The guy I was really high on in the spring is another Florida transfer, a cornerback in Jordan Young. He just was really fluid, really sticky. Good anticipation, good length. So those are some of the transfer names, I think, and there's going to be a lot of them. Those are some of the transfer names I think you're going to need to get familiar with pretty early in this process as Scott Satterfield's first team takes the field.
Okay, now let's walk into his high school recruiting. And again, where they are as far as rankings of best class, and some of that can be a little misleading because, for example, and we'll talk to Dave Biddle from Ohio State here shortly, but like Ohio State's ranked number 2, but their average player ranking is up around 94, which puts them number 1. So there's different metrics you can use and all that kind of thing. That's fine. But for Satterfield coming in, replacing Fickle in short order, getting right to work, so on and so forth, where are they? How do you feel about the recruiting class that they have coming in for next year?
So the class that's already there, I think they did a pretty good job of maintaining a couple Fickle guys. The key name to know in that class is Brady Drogosh, a four-star quarterback from Michigan, kind of perfectly fits what Scott Satterfield wants to do. So he's, I think, the big one to watch in the 2023 class. There are a couple names there that I really like, but to get to 24, I think they've been solid. I mean, it's tough when you're trying to pick right back up where Luke Fickle left off and left pretty big shoes to fill. And Scott Satterfield just hasn't recruited, Luke Fickle recruited Ohio, half of his adult life. So you don't really, see that instant connection with Satterfield into Ohio. But I think they're getting there. They pulled a couple nice Ohio prospects. They got their quarterback in the 2024 class. Last week, his name is Samaj Jones, out of Philadelphia, St. Joe's Prep, one of the bigger high school programs. They just won a state championship last year in the state of Pennsylvania. So that's you always have to get that centerpiece, a quarterback. And that one came down. It was Cincinnati, Oklahoma, and West Virginia. And all three schools wanted him. And Scott Satterfield was his first offer when he was at Louisville. That was the kid's first high major offer. And Scott Satterfield and Pete Thomas did a great job building that relationship. And anytime you can beat, two what are now conference mates, one being Oklahoma, you have to feel pretty good about the quarterback you got in for this class. A lot of skill on the outside, a couple really good safeties out of Georgia, Marquavius Sabor and Willie Goodwin, a corner and Daniel James out of another kid out of Georgia. They've gone heavy into Georgia for this class. Looks like he's going to be a good one. And then, we were spoiled with Sauce Gardner, right?
Yep.
In terms of a nickname, I got one for you, Tom.
All right, let's hear it.
Okay. They have a young man coming in from Clinton Senior High School in Clinton, South Carolina. Zaravian Johnson. His nickname, Gravy.
Ooh, I like that. I like that even better than
gravy.
Sauce. I love gravy.
Gravy Johnson.
I love gravy best because there's nothing better than biscuits and gravy. So when you got gravy, You got it going on, right?
I love it.
Were you surprised, Chad? I got to be honest with you. I was very surprised. Maybe I shouldn't be. Maybe there's some bias from the old quote-unquote sort of Big 12 media, guard, if you will, that UC was picked to finish 13 out of 14 teams in football this year. I mean, look, Luke Fickle brought in a lot of really good players to this program. Now, I know they've lost some. They've lost some to graduation. They've lost some to transfer. I get all that. But I still look at UC football, Chad, and the players they have on that roster and some additions they've made here, and I say to myself, it's hard for me to believe that there are 12 teams that are better than UC in the Big 12 this their first season in the Big 12, or are they right?
So here's the thing. I don't have a lot of problem with them being picked 13th. I don't necessarily agree with it. One of the main reasons I don't agree with it, Tom, they avoid, in the preseason poll, they avoid 4 of the top 5 teams in the conference. The only team picked to finish in the top 5 that they play is Oklahoma, and that's at Nippert Stadium.
Yep.
So I think that probably wasn't factored into the poll when maybe it should have been. But ultimately, this is a team with a new coach, stepping up a level in competition, and a team that lost almost all of their offense. I don't think people have a grasp on just how much that they lost offensively. You lost Ben Bryant. You lost almost your entire offensive line. You lost your 3 starting wide receivers. You lost your 2 NFL tight ends. You returned most of your running back room, but you're a year removed from losing Jerome Ford to the NFL, who I think is going to have a breakout year in Cleveland this year. So the offense is almost just a complete unknown because nobody was here or in a role that required them to produce from a season ago. Do I think the defense is still going to be good? Absolutely. But there aren't many teams that win a lot of games in the Big 12 with defense. So if I was picking, I probably – but here's the thing. Here's the other thing for me. Let's say they got picked 11th. Is that really any different?
Right.
I think the optics of seeing them pick 13th, obviously, with only one team below them. But I just think there are enough questions on offense that it's justifiable. Now, the other thing you have to consider is the majority of this league, the margins are paper thin. So the difference between 1 and 7 in this league is negligible almost. You could argue with Texas roster this year, they're supposed
well, but
to
I'm
be
with you though. Texas finds a way to
round.
lay an egg or at least a couple of eggs every single year. It doesn't matter who the coach is there anymore.
So 1 through 14 in this league, Cincinnati, I think there are going to be 7, possibly 8 games when the season kicks off that are going to have a 3-point or fewer spread. So coin flips. 3/4 of the schedule are going to be coin flips, and you have an offense that you're not – it's not even that you're not certain. You just have no clue. If you're being honest with yourself, we have no clue what this offense is going to look like. So I don't love it. I don't agree with it. I think they'll finish higher, but I'm not mad at it because it makes sense. It's within the realm of, yeah. I mean, I've said I can see this team going anywhere from 4-8 to 8-4, and I wouldn't blink at any of it.
I just think the quarterback, and look, I know he's bounced around a little bit. He was so highly touted coming out of high school, and look, nobody knows for sure. But, you know, we had Brian Billick, a part of the program every week to talk about the NFL last year. He was doing some work out there at Arizona State last year for Herm Edwards. I think the guy knows a lot about offense, and he thinks that Jones is capable of doing a lot of really good things. To me, he's an extremely dynamic player. And at that position, I think he's far more dynamic than Bryant. Does that mean he's a better thrower than Bryant, a more accurate thrower than Bryant? All those kinds of things remains to be seen. But I just look at a guy like him and I say to myself, if you at least have a talented quarterback in that league where you said, defenses don't win a lot of games, I think you have a fighting chance with UC. Or am I too excited about Jones?
No, I'm excited about him. One, he needs to be more consistent as a passer. Yep. But 2, he needs to find that guy that was at Florida that ran the ball some and mixed in, that ability to use his athleticism to keep defenses honest. Because if you watch him at Arizona State, he didn't run at all. I mean, it was the only time he ran was if he had to escape. There was nothing that was designed to get him in space and use his athleticism a little bit like they did at Florida. So the kid's not a pocket passer. Like, I think he can be okay as a pocket passer, but you don't want to just sit him back there like a statue and have him try to pick apart a defense. That's not his game. So if he can get back to more of who he was when he was in Florida, he had a really good junior season in Florida. If he can get back to that, I think it can be a positive.
Last thing I want to ask you about, it was asked here in the chat, where's Evan Prater in all this? I mean, this was a guy, and I watched him play a lot of high school football. He played in the same conference there at Wyoming where our kids went to school at Marymount. So I see him play all the time, or quite a few times anyway, over the course of a year. We saw him get a little bit of playing time, some starts at the end of last year. They did not go well, but it's his first time starting at the collegiate level. Where is he? Where's his future?
You ready for some information, Tom? I'm
I am.
gonna scoop
That's
you
why
here on
we
the
have
show.
you on the show, Chad.
So he suffered in the South Florida game last year a shoulder injury.
that he kind of didn't tell anybody about and played through it. And ultimately, when they got to the offseason, he tried to give it a go, and it wasn't right. So they shut him down early in the spring. And they're letting that shoulder get healthy. Well, in the meantime, since it's his throwing shoulder, he hasn't been able to throw. So for summer workouts, they've given him some looks at wide receiver. Wow. And it's going to be interesting to see where he's at rehabbing the shoulder, and if he looked good this summer in those workouts, will he potentially get a chance to show himself in the wide receiver room if he's not healthy enough or ready to play quarterback? So wow. That's not to say he's been taken out of the quarterback room, but when he couldn't throw, they're like, hey, the kid wants to get work in. Let's take a look and at least see what this looks like. So there's a possibility when we get to higher ground the first week of August that we might be the big story in town might be Evan Prater at wide receiver.
See, Chad, that's why we love having you come on the program. This is information we don't get anywhere else. Is he okay with being in the wide receiver room? Is he the kind of kid that, you know him. I don't know him. Is he the kind of kid that might look at the situation, look at the landscape, Jones right now, these other quarterbacks coming in, my chance there coupled with the injury to the shoulder, whatever it might be, repercussions from that. My best chance to continue to play a lot of football is to play another position.
I think he's been open to it this summer, and that's the first step.
Right.
If he goes out there and looks really good at it, maybe it clicks in his brain, Maybe I do have a future doing this, or maybe my trajectory changes a little bit if I focus on this and try to make something out of it. So he's been open to it. How that goes, obviously when the shoulder is healthy, is going to determine what ultimate direction it takes. But he didn't shut it down, and I think that's a good sign that he's open to look. I just want to help the team. Whatever's best for me to help the team, I want to be able to do it. And if that's moving to wide receiver, then it's moving to wide receiver. And they've taken the first step in that process. Now we see where it goes from there.
All right, last thing I want to ask you about, because there still are some recruits out there that have decisions to make. There are a lot of big ones out there that still have decisions to make. If there's one or two guys to keep an eye on between now and, whenever. They can wait as long as they want to finally commit somewhere. Are there one or two guys that, would really round out this UC class that they're still, hot on right now?
I think they got most of, there were a couple guys, obviously you're not going to get them all. There were a couple guys so what they do now is they do official visits in June. And that kind of has accelerated the whole process. Yeah. So generally you have a good idea of who the team is heavily interested in based on the official visit list. Almost all of their official visitors that they had in June have decided. So, and they have 18 commits. And this staff likes to use the transfer portal. And you already brought in, it's like 40 guys from in the last class between high school and transfer. So there's a decent chance they don't have a ton of wiggle room left. I think now what you'll see is they'll monitor high school tape through the fall and see maybe, decommitments once coaching changes start happening in December, and maybe play those markets a little bit. But right now, Samaj Jones was kind of the one that was like you were waiting to hear from. And once they got him into the fold, that I think put them in a pretty good spot for the summer. And now you can wait and see how things develop going into the fall.
All right, last thing I'm going to ask you, Chad, because, when I listen to you on the radio, you for a dude your age, you really surprise me with your musical taste. I got to tell you, you like some, you got an eclectic kind of – did you go to Post Malone? Did you go to Post Malone?
No, I had volleyball tryouts. The daughter had tryouts all the way – and we got home at like 8 o'clock last night. It's
would
relentless.
you have liked to have gone to Post Malone?
I like Post Malone. I mean, I'm not like a diehard, but I enjoy his music, so I would have checked it out if somebody called and said, "Hey, I got a ticket. Let's go listen." The only thing I don't do country. Everything else I'm pretty good with.
Yeah, I mean, you would blow my mind some of the stuff you'd have as intro music, and you'd talk a little bit about it, and I'd be like, "Wow, okay, it's."
I'm the Gen X Ken Brew.
Yeah, you are. You're exactly right. That's a great analogy. The Gen X Ken Brew. Chad, thanks so much for your time, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Tom. Have a good,
all right, man.
good one,
Chad
guys.
Brendel, Bearcat Journal, kind enough to join us, and we'll check in with him from time to time if he has the time to join us once they get to higher ground. And it's a whole different world, man, without Luke Fickell around. There's been a lot written here in the last few days. One of my favorite people, I had a chance to work with him. We've become very good friends through the years. Barry Alvarez, he was on this program, you may remember, a number of months ago. Legendary football coach at Wisconsin. Later became the athletic director, stepped down as the AD. There was a lengthy piece in The Athletic yesterday, an interview with Barry Alvarez about Luke Fickell. Boy, I tell you, man, every time you open up the newspaper, right, or jump onto the internet, Fickell is reeling in another big fish. He gets a 4-star running back recruit yesterday. They've used the transfer portal. Their offense has been brutal for a long time, despite having an offensive coach and Paul Chris there for a long time. But, I mean, they are really, really excited about Luke Fickell in Wisconsin. Why would anybody be surprised by that after what Fickell did here, right?
I'm certainly not. No, I expect Wisconsin to be a name you hear competing in the Big Ten for decades to come. I mean, they play in maybe the easiest division in Power 5 football.
Well, but that's going away next year. Not this year, but next year.
But, I mean, playing in the Big Ten, you're getting USC and UCLA. I don't see any reason why Wisconsin's not in the top tier of those teams. I mean, they already are. You already see Wisconsin. Back when Ohio State was playing for national championships, going to the playoff in the beginning of the playoff era, it was always Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship.
Yep.
So, I mean, Luke Fickell's already given them the best quarterback recruit they've had in probably since Graham Mertz. Graham Mertz didn't work out, obviously. So this new revamped offense is something we've never seen from Wisconsin. I think they have 3 5-star receivers from the transfer portal and recruiting in general. They might not have had 3 5-star receivers in the history of Wisconsin football. So it's going to be really exciting to see. They're going to start throwing the ball a little bit more. I think the days of 2 fullbacks and 3 tight ends in Wisconsin are going out the window, which is exactly what they need. That's why a lot of these Big Ten teams are getting left behind when they play teams like the SEC and teams in the Pac-12, because that smash-mouth brand of football doesn't work against high-end speed. So Fickell's doing exactly what needs to be done to revamp that roster, and I think he's going to succeed quickly.
I tell you, I think the guy's going to win a ton of games at Wisconsin, man. I think he's going to build a juggernaut up there. You can win at Wisconsin now. Barry Alvarez won 3 Rose Bowls there. This isn't like taking over for Northwestern or Purdue, for that matter. I mean, this is Wisconsin. They've got a big-time tradition since Alvarez stepped into that job 30 years ago now. I mean, they have had some really good teams there, teams you don't want to play. And now I really think for the first time since Alvarez left, not taking anything away from some of the guys, Chris won 75% of his games there. But at Wisconsin, that ain't good enough.
Yeah, and as it relates to UC and what Chad was talking about with UC football coming into the year, and you're talking about teams that are, picked ahead of UC in the standings right now, and UC's win total, I think, is set at 4.5 games. I think the thing that would make me the most nervous, and we've talked about this fairly extensively, I think, on the show, but if we haven't, sometimes I kind of forget what we talk about off the air and what we talk about on the air. But I think the one thing that would make me the most nervous as a UC football fan coming into this season is how ecstatic all of the Louisville fans are that Satterfield was gone and is now somewhere else.
Yep.
That would make me very nervous. I don't really have much else to add. I think Elliott, that's more up Elliott's alley than mine. But I don't know what you're thinking on that would be, Elliott. Just when you read any forum, any Twitter thread, anything about Kenny Satterfield, it's always, I'm just glad that he's not at Louisville anymore.
Yeah, I'm going to try to be respectful.
No, you're not. Just go ahead.
He just doesn't move the needle. I was concerned with the hire. The choices weren't great. The options weren't great. I think one of the big ones was Brian Hartline, guy from OSU. I think Satterfield is going to struggle, if I'm going to be honest. It just seems and again, I don't want to say that. I'm basing this on no evidence. He hasn't yet. You got to give these guys time to prove it.
Yes, you do.
But as of right now, I'm underwhelmed by the hire. And as we go into one of the bigger conferences in college football, he doesn't move the needle for me.
It's never the guy that replaces the guy. It's the guy that replaces the guy that
I
replaces
got
the guy.
to tell you, fellas, you know what? I disagree respectfully on this thing. I really do. Because I think everyone forgets around here. And look, if you follow Ohio State football, and a lot here in the chat are saying, trash Columbus, blah, blah, blah. Look, Luke Fickell, when he took over, now that was a scandal plague with a Terrell Pryor, all that kind of thing, right? When he took over for Tressel, it was the first and last Ohio State team ever to finish under 500. Ever. That's a long time forever at Ohio State football, okay? Urban Meyer kept him on. When Urban took over, Fickell was the interim. He interviewed for the job. They bring in Urban. Urban keeps him on as co-defensive coordinator. When UC hired him, his name might have moved the needle a little bit because we knew him in Ohio. He went to high school in Columbus. He was a star player at Ohio State. He had made a name for himself as defensive coordinator at Ohio State. But as a head coach, he had done nothing. Nothing. Satterfield may not have lived up to all the expectations at Louisville. But Satterfield does have a track record now of winning some games. Right?
Right.
Okay. So, I'm going to hold off on this thing with Satterfield. I'm going to wait a little while and kind of see what happens with this thing. I'm with you, he didn't move the needle necessarily. I'm with you all the way there. But when they hired Luke Fickell here from Columbus, there were a lot of people wondering, did they just not hire the name Luke Fickell because everybody knew what his name was, right?
Yep.
All right. Swaggy Plague says Fickell is a beast and would destroy Vrabel in a cage match.
What's by the way, what's
man, oh man, how about those two getting together now? You're talking about a couple of real men there.
What's your leash for Satterfield?
I think you got to give him at least 3-4 years.
3 years?
You have to because of all the transfer stuff going on.
Yep.
Players leaving, him bringing in others. He's been very active there. You're going into an extraordinarily difficult conference, right? For the first time ever. Look, you got to give the guy some rope. You have to. And Fickell got some rope.
He did.
Right? In a lesser conference.
He struggled mightily in the first season, so yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, there's no doubt. All right, Dave Biddle, kind enough to join us from Columbus, Ohio. We had him on the program before. We love having him back. He knows everything going on up there at Ohio State. David, good morning. How was your weekend? Hope everything's all right with you.
Doing great, Tom. Thanks for having me on. And yes, Luke Fickell would destroy Mike Vrabel in a fight. As tough as Mike Vrabel is, Luke Fickell's wrestling background would take the cake there. I have no doubt Luke Fickell could have been a national champion NCAA wrestler if he went that route. He was one of the best wrestlers in Ohio high school history. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, it's funny you bring that up because I was referring to the article written yesterday in The Athletic, an extensive interview with Barry Alvarez, a longtime great head coach, Hall of Fame coach at Wisconsin. And he was asked about Fickell, who's taken over, obviously, at Wisconsin. And he said that in the article, he talked about going to watch Fickell as a wrestler when they were trying to recruit him in Ohio. I think he was DeSales, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Yeah, so he said watching this guy and that combination of a wrestler and all the commitment and the toughness and the dedication and the time and all those kinds of things, and you couple that now with being a football player, and he said it's almost the perfect match. So even though, like you said, Vrabel's a big, strong dude, Fickell could probably put you in a pretzel.
That's exactly right. Now they're tight friends. I mean, they were best friends in college. I think they were best men at each other's weddings. Their families are tight, so they would never get in a fight. But if they did, Luke would win that fight.
All right. Let's get to Ohio State. Before we get to the team in the upcoming season, they get a huge commitment a few days ago. Many feel like Justin Scott, he's out of Chicago, is the best defensive lineman prospect in the country. Everybody was after this guy. Alabama really came down to Michigan. Most people felt like Michigan and Ohio State, but Alabama, Georgia, they're all on him. And many feel like this is the best recruiting class potentially that Ryan Day has had. Would that be accurate so far?
Yes, that would be. The last really great class to come through here, I would say, would be 2017. So that was like toward the end of the Urban Meyer era. Of course, Ryan got to coach a lot of those guys when they were juniors, his first year as head coach. But yeah, Tom, his 2021 class was really good with JT Tuimoloau and all those guys, Jack Sawyer, on and on and on, Travion Henderson, and last year's class, the 2022 class, and the 2023 class is pretty darn good too. But this 2024 class, yes, is shaping up to clearly be Ryan Day's best class. I don't think they'll finish with the top class in the nation. I think they'll finish second or third. I think Georgia will probably hold on to that top ranking. Right now it's Georgia 1, Ohio State 2. Alabama's doing what they always do. They kind of lurk behind. They're ranked like in the 20s right now, and you could bet your life they're going to be in the top 3 when all the dust settles. Yeah. So I bet it'll go Georgia 1, maybe Ohio State 2, Alabama 3, if not Georgia 1, Alabama 2, Ohio State 3. So, but yeah, I think this is going to be a top 3 class for the Buckeyes, and they're doing a great job. And as you mentioned, they got Justin Scott. That kind of came out of nowhere. Seemed like he was leaning toward Michigan, maybe go somewhere else. Loved his visit at Ohio State a couple weeks ago, and then committed about a week after that. That was a big, pleasant surprise for the Buckeyes. And as you mentioned, you could argue he's the best defensive tackle in the nation, young man out of Chicago. Then they land Miles Lockhart, a 4-star corner last week. And Tom, they're in on a bunch of other 5-stars. I don't know if they're going to get, they're in on about 5-5-stars that they have a legit chance on. The one that I think they're probably going to get is 5-star corner Aaron Scott from Springfield, Ohio. It's going to come down to Ohio State and Michigan. He's picking on his dad's birthday. He's announcing on his dad's birthday, July 30th. So I don't imagine he's going to troll his own father, who's a huge Buckeye fan, but he likes Michigan a lot. So that's one to keep an eye on. And they're in on some other 5-stars like KJ Bolden, the number 1 safety in the country. I tend to think he'll go to Georgia. And there's a few others, Dillon Stewart, Brandon Baker, Edric Houston. They're in on all those guys. If they can land Aaron Scott, maybe 1 or 2 others, then they can land or give Georgia a run for their money for the top class.
It's interesting you bring up the corners, both guys from Ohio. The other they signed on that same weekend trip here a couple of weeks ago, the kid from Glenville up in Cleveland, and how there were a lot of people out there, Dave, that felt like, and we'll get to this Michigan thing here in a minute as it pertains to losing the last 2 years to Ryan Day. We'll get to that in a second. But, all of a sudden Jim Harbaugh feels like, hey, I can come into Ohio and start stealing some guys out of there, where when Urban was here, there was a gate around that whole thing. But these 2 guys, the kid out of Springfield you alluded to, the kid out of Cleveland, all of a sudden, Day is able to close the deal, especially on defenders. I don't think skill position players are a problem for Ryan Day, but talk about what this means as far as being able to nail down defensive players to come to Ohio State.
Yeah, that's a great point, Tom. They've been knocking it out with offensive recruiting, but, Ohio State fans are like, when are they going to step it up with defensive recruiting? Not that it's been bad the last few years, but it's been nowhere near the level of the offense. And, yeah, and they have some really top-rated recruits right in our backyard in Ohio this year, and it was critical that they landed the vast majority of them. And yeah, they got Bryce West, the corner from Glenville that you mentioned, and I always thought he'd be a Buckeye. The next time Ohio State really wants a player from Glenville that they don't get, might not be the first, but it'd be one of the first, that's for sure. That hasn't happened in a long, long time, that the pipeline from Glenville is getting ratcheted back up. Aaron Scott's a little more interesting, even though I feel like he's going to be a Buckeye. The tea leaves are pointing that way. At one point, it seemed like Michigan was probably more likely, and that's still one to keep an eye on. There's no doubt about it. That Ohio State does not have him in the bag yet. They've done a really good job recruiting him. Tim Walton, the corners coach. Ryan Day has done a good job himself. He told Aaron Scott, we don't want you. we need you. And I think, that really resonated with him, and his entire family's diehard Buckeye fans, but he's been having a lot of fun with the process. But you're right. I mean, especially in your own state, you have to get these top defensive players, and you can't allow Michigan to do what they did so well in the 90s and even before that, where really the lifeblood of their program, Tom, as you know, was players from Ohio.
No doubt about
Desmond
it.
Howard from Ohio, Charles Woodson from Ohio, Elvis Gerbach from Ohio. Jim Harbaugh was born in Ohio. We could go back to the Bo Schembechler era, when they would introduce the players before the Ohio State-Michigan game. You watch those old games, half the Michigan starters would say somewhere from Ohio is where they're from. So, yeah, I think Ohio State's stemming that tide. Michigan's doing a good job overall recruiting, but Ohio State's kind of taking the bull by the horns, and they're doing a good job. And, Tom, I think NIL's helping. I think Ohio State's finally doing, they're finally where they want to be in the NIL department.
Walk me through a little bit of that, Dave, the whole NIL thing. Well, when I read that Ohio State was behind, okay, whatever that means, what does that mean?
So, this previous recruiting class, so the guys that'll be true freshmen this year, they lost out on, according to sources I trust profusely, at least 3 or 4 guys that they definitely would have landed. They gave them, silent commits, then they had to come back, or silent verbals, had to come back and say, well, can you match what this school is giving me? And at the time, first of all, Ohio State itself can't do that. They have to use the collectives. But at the time, they just weren't in the position to be able to do that. And kids were then just taking the best offer. Well, now in the 2024 class, we haven't heard about any of that. And in fact, we're hearing that NIL is helping. And a big reason is there's 2 big collectives. One called the Foundation, and then one that's newer called the 1870 Society. 1870 being the first year Ohio State was opened, first year it became a university. So the 1870 Society and then the Foundation. Both those groups are doing a great job. It comes down to that. They've got 2 heavy-hitting foundations now, collectives, that are doing a great job. Are they giving the money that Texas A&M is giving? No. Are they giving the money that Miami is giving? No. But they are overall keeping up with the Joneses. And it's really been, Tom, hasn't really been a 180 since December when you could tell Ryan Day was frustrated about it. But it's been like at least a 90. I mean, it's been a big difference in a relatively short period of time. And now you're not hearing about any of these 2024 recruits that, they're not going to get this kid because of NIL. Now Ohio State's able to compete.
All right, Dave Biddle joining us from 247 Sports, 24/7 Sports, Bucknuts Morning 5. You can get him at Dave Biddle on Twitter. A couple things I want to cover real quick before we let you go, Dave. Number one, Ryan Day, hot seat or no as it pertains to winning or losing against Michigan when all is said and done. They go undefeated this year. They beat Notre Dame. They beat Wisconsin. They beat Penn State. They beat whoever they play. They get beat by Michigan for a 3rd straight year. He on the hot seat?
He would keep his job in that scenario, Tom, unless they got completely blown out and embarrassed, or unless there something was going on, off the field on top of that, some type of scandal. Now, Ryan Day is I've gotten to know him pretty well. You never always know these guys that well, but I've gotten to know Ryan Day pretty well, and I think he's truly a very good man. But to answer your question, and it's a question that we're all wondering, would he be on the hot seat if he loses to Michigan? But that's his only loss. He would still be on the hot seat, certainly going into the next year, but I think he would keep his job if he's sitting there at 11-1. And under that scenario, they could still get in the playoffs like they did last year. And it was funny. We were, somewhat close to an Ohio State-Michigan rematch. Michigan then lost to TCU. Then it looked like Ohio State was going to beat Georgia until they didn't. So maybe Ohio State can still sneak in the playoffs at 11-1 with a loss to Michigan, but it would have to be a close loss in Ann Arbor. It's tough, though, Tom. As you know, you lose 3 straight times to Michigan, especially after dominating them for so many years. Ohio State going off a streak where they were 15-2 against Michigan, 8 wins in a row. Now you lose 2 in a row, and it almost feels like they've lost 5 in a row. As you know, being a Buckeye fan yourself, feels like they've lost more than 2. But yeah, he would be. I would say he'd be on the hot seat, going into the 2024 season for sure. But if they're 11-1 with just that one loss to Michigan, as painful as it would be, I think he would keep his job.
All right, last thing I want to ask you about. Look, the roster is what it is. When you look at the players they have, it's Ohio State, right? I mean, it's Georgia, it's Alabama. It's, you're getting the best of the best of the best. Their wide receivers, the group, the only wide receiving core better in America might be the Bengals wide receiving core. And I don't think that's a stretch. I mean, Ohio State has, along with these guys that are coming in now that were the best high school players in the country a year ago, they could have 5 or 7 first-round draft picks out of that group that's in that room right now when all's said and done. They're going to have 2 of them next year, on the heels of another one, on the heels of 2 more, and 2 more the 2 years before. The running backs, when healthy, are through the roof. In Travion Henderson, Mayan Williams, on and on and on and on. But the quarterback has started 1 game, and it looks like it's going to be Kyle McCord. Yet, in most of the preseason publications, Ohio State is picked as high as number 1. In most polls, they're number 2, number 3, number 4. Are you surprised with a brand-new quarterback that they are picked that high?
I am not, because I think Ryan Day has proven, and I feel this way as well, until proven otherwise, he's going to get the benefit of the doubt even with a new quarterback, especially one that he handpicked. He really had his pick between J.J. McCarthy and Kyle McCord and picked Kyle McCord. J.J. McCarthy would have been a Buckeye, to my understanding, if Ohio State would have offered him early. Now, you could argue that has not turned out well for Ohio State. That story is still to be determined, though. We haven't seen what Kyle McCord can do, other than one start his true freshman year against Akron. Yeah, Tom, it's going to be interesting. It's still, we still don't know for sure, but I think Kyle McCord's going to have a good year. Can he have a good enough year where Ohio State can achieve their goals? That's my question. I think he will have at least a good year. Can he have a great year? How good is this offensive line going to be? Are they going to be good enough? Not good enough to beat Rutgers and beat some of these teams. Are they going to be good enough to beat Michigan? Are they going to be good enough to beat a very good Penn State team? They have other tough games, at Wisconsin, at Notre Dame. Wisconsin's going to be ready with Luke Fickell. If they get to the playoff, can they beat – is this offensive line and is Kyle McCord going to be good enough to beat a Georgia team or whoever they would play in the playoffs? So is this defense going to be able to, contain the big plays? They're going to give up some big plays. That's part of the Jim Knowles defense. They're aggressive, but they can't be as susceptible to the big plays they were last year. And, Tom, I do think this defense is going to be much improved. But Those are your 3 main questions. Your 3 main question marks. You nailed it. It's Kyle McCord is first and foremost because quarterback's so important, and then offensive line, defense. I do believe in this roster. I think they put together a good coaching staff, including some behind-the-scenes guys like James Laurinaitis as a grad assistant. He's really the quarterback's coach. I like the coaching staff. I like the roster. There are some question marks, though. Season's going to be here before we know it, my man. I'm going to Big Ten Media Days in 2 weeks. Can't wait.
Last thing I want to ask you, and I'll let you go. I know this isn't – you don't follow Northwestern. But this is I talked about it in the monologue. This is one of those deals, Dave, where, I said it a little while ago, that we all love whistleblowers when they fit our narrative. We don't like whistleblowers when they don't fit the narrative. You and I both know we've been to Chicago and been to Northwestern football games. I'm not so sure there is a coach. Now, I'm not saying wins and losses clearly here. But I'm not so sure there's a thing as a coach who is more popular with his fan base than Pat Fitzgerald is at Northwestern. He was a great player there. They went to the Rose Bowl. He's been there for, 15, 16, 17 years. He's had offers to go other places. He's never left. He is the cheerleader for Northwestern University. Now, all of a sudden, you have a student last year that comes out, a student athlete, goes to the university administration, says this was going on, very serious charges. Okay, they print it in the student newspaper, which should not come as any surprise. That's their job, right? Now, all of a sudden, here in the last 24 hours, you get somebody that comes out and says, hey, that whistleblower told me that he was going to fabricate the stories. He was going to do everything he could to get Pat Fitzgerald fired. You have basically the entire team sign a document that says none of this nonsense is true. Where do you think all of this, and I know you don't have a crystal ball, it's a he said, she said thing, but this is a terrible, terrible story for Pat Fitzgerald and Northwestern.
Yeah, it's as you illustrated, it's so convoluted too, and I keep going back and forth on it. Initially, when they gave him the 2-week suspension, and not just the suspension, but the what they said, what the president said. It said, okay, it sounds like they're going to stand by their man here. They believe that he didn't know, but they believe he should have known. So there's the 2-week suspension, but job's probably not on the line. Then, came out late Saturday night, the president came out and revised his statement and said, well, maybe we were a little too lenient. So then I'm thinking, Tom, I'm like, oh boy, he's going to lose his job over this. Like that's not good. And then as you mentioned, the other twist now is you have another like anonymous source coming out and saying, no, the first anonymous source just, has an axe to grind with Fitz, and none of this is true. You have the entire team saying it's not true. I don't know. Sounds to me like something probably happened. I don't know to what degree.
Right.
It's awful if the allegations are true, obviously. But I don't know where I come down on this. I don't know. I keep going like, well, he's going to keep his job for at least one more year. Well, maybe he's done now, especially coming off a 1-11 season. Now these allegations, you got the president coming out and saying, well, maybe we were a little too lenient. We got to rethink the punishment. I don't know where I'm at on this now, Tom. I think they've just got to not rush this, make sure they give him due process, as crazy as that is in this world. But seriously, give him, I know it's not a court of law, but give him due process. Make sure you know what you're doing, because you're right. He is Northwestern. He turned them, when he was a player, he helped turn them into like a legit good team. As you said, he's been very good as a head coach. So I don't know. I don't know what the truth is. So it's hard to really say, but I do think at the very least, he's in very hot water right now.
All right, Dave, we thank you for your time, my friend. All the best. Have fun up at the Big Ten media days up there, and send Luke Fickell our very, very best as well.
I won't try and wrestle him. Go Reds, go Bengals. Thank you for having me on, Tom. I appreciate it.
All right, Dave Biddle, kind enough to join us at Dave Biddle. You can find him on Twitter, 24/7 Sports up there, podcasts, everything that's Ohio State. I always get a kick out of some of the people in the chat when they bring up about different teams' schedules. And the point was made here a minute ago about Ohio State playing who? Rutgers, or he includes at the same time Illinois. Didn't Illinois play in a Big Ten championship game last year? I think they did. I'm quite sure they did against Michigan. And then they played number 20 Mississippi State, an SEC team, and they got beat in the last 5 minutes of the game in a bowl game. They're playing Notre Dame. They're playing Wisconsin. They're playing Penn State, who's preseason ranked number 5. They're playing Michigan, who's preseason ranked number 2. Okay? So just hold on. Illinois is not a joke, Brian B. You couldn't be more wrong. They are not a joke.
It was Purdue in the Big Ten championship last year.
Purdue, okay. Purdue
Illinois
knocked off
Michigan down to the wire the week
That's
before.
right. That's what I was thinking of. That's a game Illinois should have won that game.
Won.
They blew that game. All right, Ham and Eggers, take it away. We got about a little less than 30 minutes to go on the program here today. One thing, I said it twice last week, Paul, you weren't here, that many have asked about it in the chat, that we never got to last week, is this whole Corey Dillon thing. I want to know your guys' thoughts on this. For those who aren't familiar, there was an article written by Paul Dehner Jr. in The Athletic, where basically he asked Corey Dillon about the Bengals Ring of Honor and about the Pro Football Hall of Fame. There are only 10 running backs in the history of the NFL, the history of the league, that average better than 4.2 yards per carry in their career, rush for over 10,000 yards in their career, and rush for better than 70 yards per game in their careers. 8 of the 10 to do that, Corey Dillon's one of them, are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The only 2 that aren't are Corey Dillon and Fred Taylor, who, of course, was around for the Jaguars, a lot of bad teams, some decent teams, great back. So they're the only 2 that aren't. We're not just talking about the Pro Football Hall of Fame now here. We're also talking about the Bengals Ring of Honor. And Dillon is the all-time leading rusher in the history of the franchise. And Corey Dillon said, listen, just turn on your recorder and print verbatim everything I am about to say, in which he launches into a 20-minute tirade about him not being in the Pro Football Hall of Fame and what a joke it is, the Bengals Ring of Honor, and the way they are determining who votes for and is being put into the Bengals Ring of Honor. It is an unbelievable exchange. It's really not even an exchange. It's a one-way conversation. And look, we live in a day and age now where you can't get more vanilla than 99% of the athletes that are asked about anything in this day and age. And this guy lays it all out there. Whether you agree with him or not, that's your decision. Jason Williams writes in the Cincinnati.com, the Inquirer, 2 days later, fresh off of this story, that Corey Dillon does not belong in the Bengals Ring of Honor. He lays out what the criteria is for the Bengals Ring of Honor, and there's nothing in there that says anything about statistics. It talks about contributions to the franchise. He cited Corey Dillon walking off the field and throwing his helmet and his shoulder pads into the stands, talking about how the Bengals suck. Those were his words, not mine. And all of the things that he said about Mike Brown, he said about the team, and all this kind of stuff. And so, in Jason Williams' mind, nope, no chance. No chance. Doesn't belong there. So, we're going to talk about this because all you guys are hardcore, well, most of you are hardcore Bengals fans. I'm not going to say all, because Paul is kind of a transplant. But he's become a Bengals fan.
No. I've always been a Bengals fan.
Oh, that's right. You're right. That's right. Okay.
What's the one thing I'll never get mistaken for, Tom? A Washington Commanders fan. Never.
I thought Dan Snyder was your best friend.
Oh, best friend.
Daniel Snyder. The last time we'll say his name on this show.
I hope.
Ham and Eggers, led by Daniel Snyder's #1 fan, Paul Fritzner. Take it away.
It's that time of the show, the Ham and Eggers. These guys are great. Trust me, I would know. I introduce all the best segments.
It would be nice if that was the last time we ever talked about Dan Snyder on this program.
Probably going to have to.
Have you guys ever seen my rant on Dan Snyder?
No.
I'll have to pull it up after the show.
Unfamiliar.
I'm not a fan of the. I'm not a.
Who is
not
a
a
fan?
fan of the individual? I don't know. I'm just making sure people know my stance. All right. Bengals Report is brought to you by Encore Technologies. Encore Technologies provides IT solutions for a data-centered world with a suite of services from mobile computing to desktop to data center, supporting both centralized and work-from-home computing models to improve efficiency and
productivity.
That's right. Visit encore.tech. The path to innovation begins here. Also, Pawnee Water. It's made right here in Hamilton. Whoa, thought it was going to fall. It uses natural limestone filtration, unlike the artificial processing that many other brands use. The result is a healthy alkaline water that's the best tasting water in the world. You can visit their website at pawneewater.com. That is PAHHNI water.com, PAHHNI water.com, to see where you can buy it. It is the official water of the River's Edge concert series, and we have seen a bunch of you tweet about Pawnee Water. You're tweeting at us, tweeting about Pawnee Water. Thanks to everybody that's bought it, that's got it, that's tweeted us about it. If you are listening to this podcast, or if you're listening to this show in podcast form on Apple, Spotify, wherever, but especially on Apple Podcasts, leave the show a rating and a review. It helps out the algorithm, helps out the suggestions, everything. We know a lot of you, hundreds of you, listen to this show every day,
if not thousands.
We joke about, or not joke. We look at the analytics of this show, and it's just been continual growth for the last 7 months. We're going on a year. We're getting real close to a year. September 1st was the first show last year, so we're getting real close to the first year of the show, first anniversary. And it's been, except for November, some reason, I don't know what happened in November. Except for November, it has been consistent growth for this show the entire time. So we want to thank all of you for that. But also, if you could help us out, leave a rating or review, that would be greatly appreciated. And you can listen to Chatterbox Reds too. Leave them a rating or review. I was just checking on that last night. I've seen a lot of you do that. Chatterbox Reds has consistently been in the top 25 of baseball podcasts nationwide on Apple. It's still sitting there last I checked. So make sure you leave everybody a little review. And the only other thing that I have was the Chatterbox Reds night. Next Monday, a week from today, July 17th against the Giants, you can buy 4 shirts on the Chatterbox store. Buy 4 shirts. You get the ticket free. You have to add the ticket to your cart. And then you can get the ticket, use code. What's the code, Casey?
C-Box?
I think it's C-Box. We should know that. I should have known that.
I believe it's C-Box.
I think it's code
I'll
C-Box.
double check.
We'll get on that for you here in a second. But it's just chatterboxsports.com. Also, there is a blog now. Oh, what? What, Elliot?
Mouse,
it is C-Box.
No, Mouse is making me laugh in the chat. Mouse, Mouse made me laugh.
Got it. The only other thing that I have to pitch while we're here is that there is a new Chatterbox blog. It's called The Word. It is on chatterboxsports.com. I am filtering through. I've seen a lot of people send emails with new articles and things to post. If you're watching the show and I have, if you sent me something, then I'm going to take a look at a lot of those today. We have a few that I posted just to get things started back on July 1st that were a little more evergreen content because I knew I was going out of town and wasn't going to be on my computer much through the week. But we're going to catch up with that, have some Reds content, Bengals as it comes, and a lot more there. So if you like the written word, which speaking of the written word, Tom, as we transition out of the Ham and Eggers segment, I don't know if you saw while you were out of the room, the New York Times cut its sports department. And they are now, I guess, transitioning into full coverage through The Athletic because they purchased The Athletic. They own The Athletic, but they cut their own, internal sports department, which is pretty crazy. They said they're not firing anybody. They're going to move some people around, I guess, to other news desks or whatever it might be. But that's pretty significant in the sports media world. And the LA Times, I don't know if the LA Times cut their sports media sports department or if they're just kind of restructuring how they cover sports. But yeah, the New York Times, that's a big deal.
That's a big deal. I mean, they never covered sports the way, the Post or the Daily News or Newsday or anything like that covered sports. They were more the big picture kind of macro, a lot of big articles, that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there were many people that went to the New York Times for their sports coverage. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I thought their investigative reporting, like you said, more of the big level macro stuff was like you'd see a big report and it'd come out, be from the New York Times or whatever. But I mean, still, to be the home of the Yankees, the Mets, the Giants, the Jets, everything, and to not have the hockey, all that, all the sports, the Knicks, not have any of that coverage, just true to New York, or have any beat writers or anything like that anymore. That's a pretty monumental step.
It is. You're right. But that's the way a lot of those local papers, so to speak, are sort of drifting.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a tough business to be in, man. Tough business to be in. There's no doubt about it. All right. I want everybody's opinion on this Corey Dillon thing. Golly, Dave, I still can't. I went back and reread it again over the weekend. I still can't believe. And you know what? I admire the guy. I have to say this. And it's not to say he didn't have his issues, because he did. And each and every one of us does. You can sit there and poke holes in everybody else's issues, but, before you do that, you might want to look in the mirror. Okay? And that's for all of us. All right? But he certainly had his ups and downs off the field. Some things happened. This was dropped. That was dropped. Whatever it might be. What he did, didn't do. I don't know. Okay? I read it just like you do. But on the field, and you heard Paul Daugherty comment about this last week, on the field, in Paul Daugherty's estimation, during his time covering the Bengals, which was a solid 30-year run, he went to virtually every game. He said, without a doubt, the best Bengals running back that he ever saw. Ran angry. Hard-nosed, tough player, man. If he'd have played on some good teams, he'd have been celebrated like the Emmitt Smiths of the world. I'm not saying he would have rushed for as many touchdowns or has rushed for as many yards as Emmitt Smith, but he would have been recognized as one of the great running backs of his generation had he played on a team that could win even 3 or 4 or 5 games in a year, which they rarely did when Dillon was here. I mean, they were terrible. That was a lost 2 decades for the Bengals. I still maintain that James Brooks is the best Bengals running back of all time, but that's just for me. My opinion's not better or worse than anybody else. based on everything you know, Casey, Corey Dillon belong in the Bengals Ring of Honor. Yay or nay?
Tom, I would have said that he deserved to be in the Hall of Fame a couple weeks ago. I'm not so sure anymore.
Wait, are we talking about Hall of Fame or Ring of Honor?
Ring of
okay,
Honor.
A Ring of Honor. Okay.
Would have been a sure thing a couple weeks ago. Eventually, right? I'm not so sure anymore. I mean, it just comes off very, very selfish to be bringing down other players that are also getting votes for the Ring of Honor, other notable Bengals. I mean, he was MFing like Dan Kitna, and he was MFing a couple other guys. Can't remember off the top of my head, but I mean, he has all the stats. He's got all the awards that you would possibly. He had I mean, awards. He won a Super Bowl ring. I mean,
with New England.
The dude is one of the best running backs, period, in NFL history from his time period. Just looking at the stats. He was going to get it eventually. Why? He just doesn't understand the premise of the Ring of Honor, how it works, why it's so important to get other players that are older in first, because they don't have a whole lot of time to be that to see that award. So I don't know. I'm not a fan of him blowing up like he did. It's going to be a really tough spot for the Bengals ownership to look at him and say, you don't deserve to be in it because of your, because of how the way you acted. The way that you exited us was not, the way that you talk about us is just not what we want in our Ring of Honor. So that's my overall thoughts on
Paul?
It just feels real tired to me, Tom. I'll be honest. I looked into it. I saw the headline. I kind of either clicked on the article or kind of expanded the details, on Twitter. And I was just so over it immediately. I just find no interest in people complaining like this over something like this where it's just supposed to be something good for the fans and for the team and for the collective, maybe the city, to celebrate something good. And you just go out there and you do something like this. I don't care enough to want to hear about it. If you got those thoughts, all right, I guess that's your avenue to share it. I guess that's how you want to use that platform to go out there and make your point. If you want to make the statement, all right, fine. But I don't care about it. I don't want to hear about it.
Okay.
So,
Can I add one more thing too?
Yeah.
He's not doing himself any favors by doing this. No one's going to vote for the guy now. You're not improving your chances to get in by acting like this. You're only hurting yourself. So I don't know.
To his credit, the Bengals organization wasn't exactly great up until the last several years. The way the Bengals have treated players, the way they've run practices, they have had guys paying for their own water, stuff like that. The Bengals franchise has not been the pinnacle of what a good franchise should be for a long time. It was just bad, right? That's to his credit. Now, I don't know who does he want to go in over? Ken Anderson? Willie Anderson? Who does he think he deserves to be in over?
I don't think the one thing I did get out of the article to address what you're saying is that I did get out of the article was, as selfish as he may have come across about this whole thing, he did not in any form or fashion disparage those that are already in or other players on the ballot. I mean, he made it a point. He said, look, Chad Ochocinco absolutely deserves to be in there. Boomer absolutely deserves to be in there. He only named a couple.
Yeah.
And I, maybe those were guys that he just knew were up off the top of his head. I don't know. But he wasn't saying anything disparaging about guys that are already in. So I didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay,
Please
but that's good. And I think he said in the article it's not against fans or anything. It's just against the front office, Mike Brown probably. So but to Casey's credit now, I'm probably not going to vote for him. So I don't know what his point was with this. It's not going to go well for him. But like Carson Palmer, some guys just were rubbed the wrong way by this front office.
Yeah, I mean, I have very similar thoughts to the rest of them. Corey Dillon numbers belong in any Ring of Honor you can think about.
No doubt
for
about
the
it.
Bengals organization. That's not what this is. The franchise laid that out when they started the Ring of Honor. The Ring of Honor is not the best players to play for the Bengals. It's the best ambassadors to the franchise. And Corey Dillon certainly was not that. So I think he's years out of having a fair gripe. I mean, the guys that got in are 2 Hall of Famers. The guy that started the organization, Willie Anderson, who certainly should be there. Isaac Curtis revolutionized the wide receiver position, and Ken Anderson went to a Super Bowl.
And should be in the Hall of Fame.
Right. You're putting 2 guys in a year. If he wants to have a gripe with the system, fine, I guess. But that's the system, and that's the way they laid it out, and that's the way they're doing it. I can't find someone I'd rather have him in over of the people that are already in. And of the people that are around, he didn't get my vote this year. I mean, kind of like Casey said, I feel like the older players that are deserving need to get in first so they have a chance to enjoy it while they're around. I mean, we're doing all this stuff to recognize Ken Riley. It's a couple years too late. Like, how great would it be to have Ken Riley down there on the field for his Ring of Honor? Ken Riley there for his enshrinement into Canton. Like, that's the stuff you're missing out if you're putting guys like Corey Dillon, who granted have the numbers. You're putting them over guys, Bob Trumpy. We were just talking about that's the best tight end in Bengals history. Guys like that need to get in while they're still here and can recognize that accomplishment.
Which is why I think that at least for these first couple of years, maybe after the first year, after that first year, which has to be an extremely special over-the-top class, right? First year you had Isaac, Anthony, and who?
I believe Paul Brown.
Paul Brown, for sure, right. Okay, Kenny was in that first class too, wasn't he?
I believe so.
Okay, well, the point I'm making is however many it is, okay, is that because you're playing catch-up, I think that once you got to the second year, the third year, you should be putting in more than 3 in a year. I think, I think this was one, this is something he kind of alluded to a little bit, is that why not go ahead and put 5 or 6 in, and then 5 or 6 in? So you cover the old guys, but you're also covering the guys that we all know should be in there, right? All know should be in. I mean, Ocho Cinco, and maybe he'll go in this year. I don't know. Boomer Esiason, Chris Collinsworth, Max Montoya, Dave Lapham, I think we all agree has a very good shot this year. Even guys like, God rest their souls, in Sam Weish and Forrest Craig and all that kind of thing. But it's tricky business here, because in the mission statement as it's laid out, you pointed it out, Jacob. They're not saying stats, but I think anybody who watched Corey Dillon play, this guy left it all out there, man. I mean, he was all they had. You alluded to Kitna, and there was Scott Mitchell, and there were all these other guys where opposing defenses, I mean, the thing that boggles my mind is the Bengals can't get a running back to do anywhere close to what Corey Dillon did in a day and age where they have Joe Burrow and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd and Jamar Chase and all these weapons where defenses have to prepare for each and every one of them, right? Yeah. Back in those days, the only thing defenses had to worry about when they played the Bengals was Corey Dillon.
Right.
And the guy still ran every single year for 1,400 yards. He broke the all-time rookie single-game rushing record that was held by Jim Brown. 257 yards or something like that in a game. So, I mean, this guy laid it out there, man, on terrible teams. And frustrated, right now there's this kumbaya love fest between the town and the Bengals. And a lot of that is for people that are your guys' age. I can't tell you how many people that are my age and a little bit older that had Bengal season tickets, and after about 2 decades of watching that mess down there, they said, I'll never go to another Bengals game again because of ownership. I mean, think of the Castellinis and everything that's happened with them just in the last handful of years. This was the Bengals over 25 years. And Corey Dillon just happened to be playing right smack dab in the middle of that mess when you had Dave Shula and all these guys winning 2 games a year and getting your brains beat in every single week. Well, now all of a sudden, everybody loves the Bengals, and Corey Dillon has not forgotten what it used to be like to play for the Bengals when they were the laughingstock of the NFL. So I think there's got to be some middle ground here in all this, and it will be interesting to see. I personally don't like the way they're conducting the voting for this. I am in agreement with Dillon on this because, and it's nothing against Jake, but a season ticket holder, you get to vote, right?
Right.
Okay, you never saw Corey Dillon play.
That's correct.
Right? And look, I don't know how many people saw Bob Trumpy play. I mean, you've got to be older than me to remember watching Bob Trumpy play. You really do. So, you can't go out and find a bunch of 75-year-olds to be voting for this. But there should be some kind of balance, I think, about who's doing the voting. I love fans voting. A lot of people didn't like it for the baseball all-star game. I love it. It's their game. They see who they want to see. I'm all for it. But fans in baseball balloting for the all-star game could range from 5 years old to 105 years old.
Yep.
Right? So, anyway, that's that.
Now, Tom, the one thing I would say to that is maybe I don't remember Corey Dillon playing. I certainly remember him throwing his pads and his helmet into the stands.
You're right.
And that has every bit to do with voting for the Ring of Honor as opposed to playing.
You're spot on.
And it's not like he's not in the top 13 players of the Bengals franchise. He's a nominee.
Yep.
He's taking shots at John Kitna saying, they're going to put John Kitna in over me. Well, obviously not, because you're one of the 13 nominees and he's not. So it's not like they're completely disregarding what he did for this franchise. He's being recognized as a fundamental part of, great Bengals teams of the past. Or not great Bengals teams of the past, but a great player of the Bengals past. And I don't know. If you want to have a gripe with how the system is currently set up, that's fine. I don't think Corey Dillon has a gripe about not being in.
Okay. Anything else before we get to, do we have a cherry on top?
We do.
We do. All right, it's presented by United Dairy Farmers. Here we go.
This is not sports related at all. It's just cool. I don't know if you saw this picture, Tom. This took years, 3 years to line this picture up.
Really?
This is the statue. This is down in Rio in Brazil.
Yep.
Yeah, the guy that took
concrete Christ.
Yeah, the Christ the Redeemer. Yep. And this is a picture that took 3 years of studying. I guess, whatever the pattern of the moon and the curvature of the earth, or the rotation of the earth, not the curvature, the rotation and everything else. Just thought it was a great picture.
That is very cool.
It's pretty cool.
3 years just to get that picture.
That is beautiful. Beautiful. See, we're all about love and peace and hope here on Off the Bench.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
All right, anything, fellas, on your mind? Is there a box lunch today?
Reed said there was a box lunch today. So if Reed is listening to the show right now, Reed can tell us if there is a box lunch.
I don't know if we're going to get one.
I don't know. He said, is it a no-shtick Monday or is it a shtick Monday?
No, it's no shtick Wednesday. Shtick Mondays are in
Shticks
full
are in
go.
full swing.
All right. Well, so I don't. Okay, Reed
says yes.
Reed says there is a box lunch. So
well, that's starting in 3 minutes. Is he coming in here, or how does that work?
To box. Well, when you were, because
you need me to get off my tail to get it going,
yeah,
right?
Not enough chairs anymore.
A lot of people in the chat today have been suggesting Danny Graves. I just reached out to him about coming on the program. This is the Reds Hall of Fame weekend this weekend. It's a big deal.
It is.
Bronson Arroyo's going on. Danny Graves, the Reds all-time saves leader, is going in. Looking forward to trying to get Danny Graves on here. He is such a great guy. He really is. He filled in and did some games on the radio there for a couple of years with the Reds, and I had never really been around Danny Graves because I wasn't working here by the time that his career really took off, and wasn't around by the time his career was over. I wasn't even moved back into town yet. But, I mean, what an awesome guy, and hopefully we can get him on. before the weekend comes around. That would be fun. We're going to have Dennis Jansen on Wednesday, the legendary DJ, longest-running sports anchor in this town forever, one of the greatest storytellers that has ever lived. I mean, this is a guy that covered he was hanging out with the Roses and the Benches and the Morgans and all those guys back in the 70s. And he came all the way up through until retiring a number of years ago, but is still really dialed into the whole Cincinnati sports scene. We'll walk down memory lane with him. He would be able to talk about Corey Dillon at length and his thoughts on that whole thing, among many, many, many other topics. Tomorrow we have Tracy Jones coming on the program, talk about the Home Run Derby, which is later tonight, All-Star Game tomorrow night. So a lot going on. The Reds enjoy 3 days off after the weekend in Milwaukee, sitting atop the National League's Central Division at the All-Star break. But right now, there are more important things in this world, and that would begin with boxed lunch. Gentlemen, take it away. Here we go.
I must admit, I didn't think much of this show the first time I laid eyes on it. Seemed like a bunch of stiffs wasting nice
The worst
microphones.
trade of all time happened back in 1803. Go ahead. Napoleon Bonaparte traded the Louisiana Purchase for $3 million. Napoleon, what happened? Half the country for $3 million. You can't even get Tucker Barnhart for $3 million.
Then I came to realize these guys are funny.
And Justin Fields have identical stats the last 5 weeks about throwing the football. This guy, okay,
And
folks,
are
is a
some of the
fidget
best
spinner.
gamblers I've come to know.
If you're betting on USC and or TCU, let it be known you are a square.
TCU is going to hammer this team tomorrow night.
And I hate to hear that.
Tomorrow
When we come back
afternoon.
in here on Monday, you're going to be happy as a lark because USC lost, but you're going to be wrong about TCU.
Get ready for the most useless hour of your day. It's time for Boxed Lunch, presented by Betfred Sportsbook. Now, Casey, run that track.
We'll rock and roll to get the All-Star break going, guys. Heck yeah. Guys, this is Box Lunch presented by Biddle. What happened at the end of that show right there? About me doing the show? Paul, you said your sentence was, Reed said he's doing a show, so like, is he doing a show? I was like, what are we talking about?
Well, you guys said you had a meeting. So I didn't.
Meeting at 1:30. Yeah,
Oh,
so it's gotta
okay,
be a shorter
okay.
show.
Okay.
And then Tom's like, well, he's got a show in 3 minutes. Where am I gonna sit in here?
That's what I
was
said.
like,
That's what I said.
going
That's what I
on?
said.
Good thing you work right outside the door.
I was like, what is going on in here?
Yeah.
Oh well. So that's actually a great way to segue into this show. Sure, why not? So I got to tell a story before we get this show rolling. It's going to be an abbreviated show. We got a meeting out at 1:30 out at Mason. So we got about a 45-minute show. And this story, so yesterday rolls around. I own an old house. It's got a bunch of windows, 43 windows to be exact, and they have almost never been replaced. So me and my wife renovating this house. We've got to slowly start getting some windows. We've gotten a few quotes. My wife hits me up with yesterday about 2 o'clock, said, hey, a window salesman's going to be coming by about 3 o'clock to give us a quote and yada, yada, yada. He had a great deal, so just ask him about this deal. And I said, all right, that's fine. Every other quote that we've got, it's taken like 20 minutes. They size a couple windows, they give us a quote, and they're on their way. So this guy shows up, knocks on the door. Hey, how's it going? My name's Jeff. Hi, I'm Reed. Your wife said you have a meeting. Yeah, it's cool. 2.5 hour meeting that she signs me up for. Meanwhile, she tells me that she's upstairs in the bedroom just taking a nap. She's like, I'm going to take a nap. You deal with the salesman. It's a 2.5 hour meeting. He tells me this up front, and I'm not mean enough of a guy to just go like, all right, go pound sand, go kick rocks, get out of here. I don't want to deal with this 2.5 hour meeting. So I sit down. He puts me through this whole Cutco cutlery situation where he's doing all these window gimmicks, these magic tricks with windows. He's showing me them. He goes through every window, sizing them up. We get to the end. 2.5 hours. I've been roped in. Fantastic guy. I feel bad that he borrowed that he pretty much wasted his time. We get to the end, we get the quote. So, guys, I know only Casey's a homeowner here, but I have 43 windows. And I'll tell you what the other quotes for these 43 windows is. It's about $30,000 to replace them all. Obviously, we're not going to do that all at one time, probably just doing a room by room. Any of you guys want to take a stab in the dark at what the quote that I got for the 43 windows to replace my house was?
I'll say $50,000.
$50,000 is what you're putting in. These are top of the line windows, and I'm just going to throw that as a caveat.
What company?
Anderson.
Oh, Anderson, yeah.
Renewal by Anderson. Yep.
Yeah.
I have a hard time saying a number above 50, but
No, it's way above 50 because we.
All right.
We went through the same thing. No, it's way above 50.
Okay, then I'll say 75.
Yeah, no, it's
75?
76.
76. Casey, you want to take a stab at it?
I'm gonna say 83,000.
I'm gonna go closer to 100. I'll say 95.
You said 50.
No, I said I didn't realize it was Anderson.
Oh,
yeah, Anderson
okay.
is the top of the line. That's why
top
I
of the
asked.
line. It is Anderson.
I'll say 95.
Oh, well, then I got bamboozled. Then I'm up in mine. I'm going up to 89,000.
89. You guys done with your things? You guys are all way off. $164,000 to replace the windows in my house. Guys, I have never been put to the test more than to not laugh at this guy's face when he threw out $164,000 to replace the windows in my house. Guys, if I had $164,000, I would just buy a second house. That's a whole nother house that I could buy, rent it out, do whatever the hell I want to do with it. I ain't replacing windows for $164,000, but the good thing is they do monthly payments for 60 months, 5 years.
A mortgage?
For 60 months, 5 years, I could have brand new windows in my house for the mere monthly payment of $4,500 a month. That is $1 million house, guys. That is $1 million house payment. What the hell was Jeff from Anderson doing? And I've never been so mad at my wife that I was so infuriated that 2.5 hour meeting, $165,000 quote. All I could do was laugh when he left.
Fred M makes a great point here. Probably saw that Cubs flag on the front porch and hiked your numbers up.
Well, that's the worst part about it either. I'm not a huge small talker. I don't like small talk. I like to bullshit, but I don't like the hey, how's it going and that stuff. And because he's a salesman and he's trying to be charming and everything like that, he sees the W flag. He meets my dog named Rizzo and everything. So we're talking Cubs for 45 minutes, and I'm just like, dude, I mean, if this is prolonging this consultation, let's just cut the Cubs talk in the bud. Let's just nip that right in the bud. Let's move on. Let's get this thing over as quick as possible. Absolutely asinine, that whole meeting. Golly gee, $164,000. But hey, they looked like great windows.
Let me ask you this though: you ever been bit by a mosquito? Have you ever been?
Sure.
Windows keep out mosquitoes. $164,000. I'd say it's priceless. Not being bit by a mosquito.
Malaria is coming back in the United States.
Yeah, is that on the up?
Who's back of the week? Malaria.
It's malaria.
Oh yeah, baby.
Oh, no.
Cases in Florida and Texas.
See, Reed, did he have mosquitoes in his speech?
He did not have mosquitoes in his speech.
That's a miss on his part then, because $164,000 is easier to swallow when you throw in that at night you could be ravaged by mosquitoes.
So my favorite thing about his pitch was Anderson, great windows. They pride themselves. At least this is what this guy's telling me. I mean, he's just selling a hell of a pitch, and he's saying that they are at the forefront of innovation in windows. They invented vinyl windows. They don't use vinyl windows anymore because they're not good. Yada yada yada. And he teaches me the 4 different kinds of windows. There's vinyl windows. There's windows with a wooden frame. There's windows with a carbon fiber frame, which Jeff could not say enough that he. Just carbon fiber is as bad as it gets. You cannot have a carbon fiber window frame. Anderson windows use a 4th kind of material, and it's way better. It's not wood, it's not vinyl, and it's not carbon fiber. It is a material that they call Fiber X.
Hell yeah.
He never broke down what Fiber X was, but it is their own material. It is Fiber X. It's not carbon fiber, it's Fiber X. And I was like, Jeff, I think you're using carbon fiber windows. I think you're just upselling me on a carbon fiber window at this point. I digress.
$164,000 for the windows, but all that knowledge was free, Reed.
All of it was priceless, Jacob.
I will never rip up that quote, that sheet that he gave me. The quote, and then he breaks down. He's like, obviously that's wildly unobtainable. What if you just broke it down by room? Which room do you think you'd want to replace the windows first in? I said, the master bedroom. There's 5 windows in our master bedroom. So he gives me a quote. Reminder, the other company that we had would replace all the windows for $30,000. Anderson, Renewable Anderson, will replace the windows in our master bedroom for the small price of $20,000. So, I mean, just absolutely. It's like $4,000 a window, guys. When it should be like.
How big is this window? Just curious.
Normal size. It's
do they include
58 inches by.
So they're
34.
not even
they're not even special windows. No, I don't have a house full of bay windows.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Did they include the screens?
Yeah. Well, so.
Uh-oh.
It's an extra $164,000.
Well, they include the screens. They include the screens, but they have an upsell on the screens where
Screen X.
He showed me Screen X. That was funny. He shows me the screen. It's obviously dark, it's metal and stuff like that, so it kind of distorts your vision out the window, makes things a little darker. They have a premiere screen. Look at this, and he shows me it on his window. He's like, looks exactly the same, doesn't it? And I said, it does look exactly the same. He said, it's only going to be like $200 per window. And I said, all right, well, we'll use the other screen. Keep the other screen in the price. It was just ridiculous. So an average window, I think, is like $500. If you Google it, it says anywhere between $300 and $1,000. It is $4,000 per window at Anderson. So best of luck to Jeff. I hope you get some sales pretty soon. You will not be getting my humble vote as a place of business anytime soon. Just a crazy way to spend a Sunday afternoon. All right, let's talk about the Home Run Derby. Guys, is the Home Run Derby the best skills event in sports? Is it your favorite skills event in sports? Obviously, the other ones, everyone likes the dunk contest, three-point contest stuff in the NBA. NFL obviously has their whatever they do for the Pro Bowl, that the dodgeball game and everything like that, which is actually more fun than people give it credit for. But is the Home Run Derby the best skills event in sports? Jacob, Elliot?
With the way the dunk contest has gone the last couple of years, Home Run Derby's taken over. I mean, I was a dunk contest guy for a while, but you haven't had someone good at basketball in the dunk contest in years. So.
Mac McClung.
Yeah.
Does the dunk contest suffer from not having stars in the competition? I think they suffer more just from there's only, the phrase, bunch of ways to skin a cat or whatever it is. There's only so many ways you can put that ball through that hoop.
Now, I think if it was LeBron James doing the one-arm tomahawks, it's a little different than the G League MVP of that year. But the Home Run Derby is definitely better now.
And I think like the whole format, the whole structure of the Home Run Derby is better. The matchups, you get to see who gets to play who in a matchup. The time limit that you have on it, like it's like the home run or the slam dunk contest is just like Dwayne Wade giving out 10s to Mac McClung.
Yeah,
who just did a windmill. It's like the whole format for the Home Run Derby is infinitely better. Infinitely.
I hate to do the participation trophy thing because that's not what I'm trying to do here, but when everybody gets a 10, it just takes away from everything. When the random guy that goes up there and just throws down probably what should be like a 6 out of 10.
Yeah.
Consistently gets 9s and 10s. Bro, just get this guy out of here.
Yeah, I think the dunk contest has a bunch of problems. I think the biggest problem is that it's been going on for almost 40 years now. I mean, there's only so many ways you can dunk that basketball. Now the Home Run Derby is by far, I think it's in a league of its own. The dunk contest was the closest thing that it had to competition. And if you guys forget, the Home Run Derby got kind of stale for a while there, and its rebirth happened in Cincinnati.
Yep.
Yeah.
Todd Frazier, that was the first year of the timed event, and at that point, it was kind of just dwindling in popularity. The 10-out system, whatever system that they used.
It was terrible.
It was just not – we didn't know it was terrible. We didn't. Like, it was just that's how they did the Home Run Derby. It was the new system that made you realize, oh, my God, this is an infinitely better way of doing this. And ever since then, the Home Run Derby has been wildly popular. It's been incredibly entertaining.
Did they do the bracket then, like the matchups? Was that the first year of that, or would that come later?
Yeah, it was the first year of the brackets, first year of the one-on-one challenges. I was actually at the Home Run Derby. I don't know if any of you guys were.
I was not.
I'm in Cincinnati. I went because there was 2 Cubs in the home run derby. Chris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo were both in that home run derby. I think they hit a combined 2 home runs. It was not a good showing from the old Cublets in that 2015 home run derby. I was wildly upset about that. But what a great night for Cincinnati, and just Todd Frazier coming in. And like I said, maybe it was just the revamping of the system. It also was the fact that it came down to the final seconds. The hometown boy wins, and just ever since then, it feels like the home run derby has just had new life, and it's been absolutely incredible. Now, the question is can the MLB, is there room, do you guys think, for any other skills challenge in Major League Baseball?
I think so. I say this unironically. The way I think it's Korea that does this. They do a bunt off. They do they have
Japan.
So they put targets. They put targets on the field. I think that could be something.
Can you imagine being in the stadium for a bunt off?
Yeah, dude, that's electric. That's electric.
If you do it after the home run derby when everyone's already tanked up, it'd be pretty exciting.
I like the celebrity softball game. I think the celebrity. I think the
I wish
celebrity
it had a better time slot.
Yeah, I think the
It's on
celebrity
Super 8.
softball game is a ton of fun. I don't love. No, let's back up. I don't really care about the futures game. I'll watch it, but it's not It's not that I dislike it. It's just it's whatever. But the celebrity softball game is always fun because they always really get into it. You can tell everybody that's there really cares and wants to play, and it's fun, and they joke around. And the TV format keeps it nice and concise. I like the celebrity softball game a lot. I was trying to think of other things that they could do.
I have an idea for one, but you're speaking of the futures game, and while we're talking about the 2015 All-Star game that happened in Cincinnati, did you guys see the roster for that 2015 in hindsight?
Unbelievable.
So on Team USA, the pitchers are Amir Garrett from the Reds, but then Lucas Giolito, Sean Newcomb, Aaron Nola, Blake Snell, Colin Ray, catcher Kyle Schwarber, Kyle Farmer. Infielders are Matt Olson, Trevor Story, Trey Turner, Aaron Judge, Michael Conforto, Brandon Nimmo, all in the outfield for the World Team. You're talking about guys like I'm looking at the team right now: Orlando Arcia, Rafael Devers, Ketel Marte, Manuel Margot, Nomar Mazara. I guess the World Team wasn't as good. Gary Sanchez was on that team. Jose Barreras, Edwin Diaz. So it was an awesome futures game. Obviously, you don't know any of those players for the most part when you're watching it in 2015, but if you get a chance to sit down and watch the futures game, you might see some future. I think, Elliot, you're going to make a point before I got into that rant.
No, I was just going to say I was at the celebrity softball game because you buy tickets for different days, obviously. So I was at
when we booed Andy Dalton.
Yes, that's correct.
As a city.
So I was at the softball game and the futures game. I remember the futures game. That was Schwarber, I think, right? You said, was that Schwarber? I'm almost certain Schwarber hit a home run or a double
in the futures game.
Yeah,
I think he played well. Yeah, I don't have the box score in front of me.
Anyway, despite that, I think it's just everything about the MLB All-Star Weekend is so much, or MLB All-Star Week, I should say, is better than the NBA stuff that they do.
Yeah, I agree.
The one thing I would no one would sign up for it, but a fastest pitch. A fastest third to first, throw across the diamond.
That would be good.
Seeing Elly and Mason Wynn try to whip it 105 miles an hour to first base, but you tear your shoulder up, so no one's signing up for that.
Race across the diamond, or whoever can run across the bases.
First to home.
I would love to see an event I've seen these at baseball camps before, and basically how it is a team, say the Reds, come out, they select 3 people, right? They get Alexis Diaz. They get Elly De La Cruz and Spencer Steer. And basically the game is the opposing pitcher comes up, he throws, and you have a hitter. And after he hits the ball, one fielder is going to start at home plate and take off after the ball, wherever the ball is hit. And then you have a base runner whose job is to run around the bases and just see how many bases you touch before the fielder gets to the ball. You put one in the gap. Elly De La Cruz just starts sprinting around the base paths, and he gets 8 points. And that could be, you could make some style of game against that, the couple of NL Central teams play against each other. I think that'd be a whole lot of fun.
A pickle off. We could do a pickle off.
They just play pickle.
We could do, or we could just do a pickoff competition. We have John Lester as the unlimited pitcher, and he just tries to pick off somebody at first base. I don't think it'll ever happen, but I think it'd be a fun game to see. He just throws balls in the stands every time he tries to throw one over there.
So I remember watching opening day back in 2015. This was the first year that the Cubs got John Lester. And it was big what to do about this Cubs team's finally going to compete after being miserable for about 5 years. And John Lester's the opening day starter for the Cubs. And I had no idea that he had problems with picking off. But apparently everyone on the St. Louis Cardinals did, because that was the whole talk of the conversation. Yep. Like, he's literally, the dudes are getting 12 feet, 15 feet off the bag, and John Lester's just looking at him, and the announcers, I forget who was calling the game, just go, yeah, John Lester is afraid to pick the ball off, and they're just stealing left and right. I was like, wait a minute, we spent $150 million on a guy who won't throw to first base? What is going on? Obviously, it worked out for the best, but it was very funny that I'm watching opening day, had no idea what any of this was going to happen, and John Lester's just deathly terrified of throwing over to first base. But I agree. There's room for improvement in the MLB All-Star Week. Paul, you are absolutely right in that the celebrity softball game is wildly underrated. So much fun.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's just the format is great. The people care. It's condensed. It doesn't drag. It does get a little funky when you get late in the night and then they all of a sudden there's like 5 more runs on the scoreboard because a bunch of runs scored and they had to edit it out because there was just too much going on. But yeah, I think that's great. I don't know if there really is anything else, and I'm sure there's something we could come up with, like the bunting contest or something that you could do that would be funny. But I don't know what else in baseball there would be, because like basketball, you have the ball handling, you have all those things that you could do that aren't gonna create injuries very easily. Obviously, you can get hurt doing anything. But like the ball handling, the passing, and all that, which is entertaining. The hockey one is cool, but nobody watches it. The hockey one is cool. Yeah. I think the home run derby is outstanding.
They already did the celebrity softball game, right?
Yeah, they do. They play it on Sundays.
They played on Sunday. Who were some big names? I'm looking at it right now. Some of the people, like they have the Olympic snowboarder Chloe Kim, Adam Devine from Workaholics, The Miz. Shout out to
Donovan Mitchell, I think.
Donovan Mitchell was there.
Joel McHale.
Okay.
Zach LaVine.
They didn't have like
Felix Hernandez was there.
Really? That's great.
Oh, I guess all the Mariners. Mike Cameron was there.
JoJo Siwa.
Is Jenny Finch there? Because
Jenny Finch was
if
there.
She's not there, I'm out.
She's there.
All right, good.
Did she hit a home run?
Do old baseball players, like I know that you said King Felix and stuff like that, but I remember like Raleigh Fingers used to always play in it. Like,
Brett Boone, Ryan Howard, Adam Jones.
That's a guy you want on your team. So that's young guys. They don't.
Who is J.P. Sachs? Who's blessed? Don't know these people.
Was anyone more obvious about doing steroids than Brett Boone? I mean, Brett Boone just can't. I mean, I know they were all like they'd come back and look pretty big, but like Brett Boone just out of nowhere was humongous, and he also hit like 40 home runs after not for a while. He hit in one random season after seasons of 7 home runs, 20 home runs, 19 home runs. He hit 37 and 35 in back-to-back seasons. Brett Boone. All right. So MLB draft is going on. I believe the second in a few days, and I actually have
second was last night as well.
Right, second round. I'm saying like the second day starts soon.
Yeah.
I actually have a hypothetical, which probably we should have segued in when I was making the J-Bar about this earlier, but we'll get to it later. So a lot of talk is talked about the MLB draft, and there seems to be still, I don't know, an opinion about the MLB draft that it's, I think Trace put out that it's a crapshoot of all crapshoots, which in some aspect it still is, right? I think the biggest disconnect from the MLB draft as opposed to the NFL and NBA draft is simply you don't see the players again for 3 years, 2 to 3 years. You know, when you draft an NFL draft, you know that guy's going to be on the opening day, on the week 1. He's going to be an impact player week 1. Same with the NBA, although I'd argue that outside of the lottery, how many of NBA draft picks really matter? Because they don't. I mean, you get every once in a while, you get the crapshoot. You get an MVP in the second round in the NBA and stuff like that. But the MLB, I mean, if you look at the way that the Reds are structured now, almost every dude on the team that isn't international is a first or second round draft choice. So this is Cincinnati Reds right now, and when they were taken in the draft, Jonathan India was a first-round pick. Matt McClain was a first-round pick. Nick Senzel was a first-round pick. Will Benson was a first-round pick. Tyler Stevenson was a first-round pick. Hunter Green was a first-round pick. Nick Lodolo was a first-round pick. Andrew Abbott, Jake Fraley were both second-round picks, and Spencer Steer was a third-round pick. So the idea that the MLB draft doesn't mean anything, that they're really just throwing darts at a board and have no idea what's coming back, is long been not true. And that's been the case for almost 2 decades now, that the best players in the league, if they're not international, were more than likely taken in the first or second rounds. I mean, if you look at the first round of the 2015 draft, out of the 42 players taken, I think 35 of them made the MLB, and a lot of them are still impact players to this day. Alex Bregman, Dansby Swanson, Andrew Benintendi, Kyle Tucker, and Austin Riley, Walker Buehler, Ian Happ. The list goes on and on. So you can't get wrapped up in the MLB draft. You can't look at a player and think that, Rhett Lauder, he's going to be the fifth pitcher on the rotation next year, although he has a unique ability where he looks almost MLB ready. That's not the case. That's not normally what happens. Normally, you're just looking for talent. You take the best player available. I prefer teams to take college players because there's a lot less gambling there. They're playing at a higher level for 3-4 years at that point. And hopefully you see them back in 3 years. That's really all the case is. And if you look at the teams that the Reds are, strongly linked to in the way that this rebuild has happened, I bring up the Cubs all the time, the Astros. Those teams did a large portion of it in the draft. Look at those Astros team. Alex Bregman, Carlos Correa, first-round draft choice. You look at the Cubs. Chris Bryant, Javi Baez, Kyle Schwarber, all taken in the first round in consecutive seasons. So the draft, by no stretch of the imagination, is a crapshoot. The draft is wildly important, and you got to hit on your players. And for the most part, those players are all going to be MLB players at some point. I just feel like there's a misnomer that you got 50-50.
Well, I think where people lose interest, and I do lose interest in the MLB draft, is that you don't see these guys for 4 years, and when you do see them, they might not even be for your team. I think that's the issue. Like, you go to the NFL draft, you're going to see Baker Mayfield.
Right, that's why it's
not
a television product, right? That's why, like, when,
but
100,000 people show up to NFL draft because that dude is going to be a starter week 1.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's not a television product because nobody cares about it because you don't see him for 5 years. In my opinion, that's the thing. And in some of these drafts, they are completely misses. The Nick Senzel draft is one of the worst drafts I've ever seen in that first round. I think every good player that was a part of that 2015 or 16, whenever it was, all came well after the first round. So I think there are a couple. I mean, obviously Nick Senzel is on the Reds and he's competing at a major league level. I'm just saying they're not like. I mean, you're not getting superstars every time in the first round.
Well, no draft is like that.
No,
I just think there's I keep saying, there's a disconnect that the MLB draft is just, like I said, throwing darts at a board, hopefully something sticks. It's not like that at all. It's been shown that if you're drafted in the first round, you've got a more than, I feel like people think there's like a 20% shot that this guy plays in the MLB at someday. No, that's not it at all. Majority of the case, they all play in the MLB. Like I said, the 2015 draft, I think I looked up 33 out of the 42 people taken in the first round in the supplemental draft are all in the MLB currently or have played MLB games. It will never be a television product. That's well established because the players don't matter for a few years. But the players matter. Just won't for a few years. You got to hit in the draft, and for the most part, the good teams do. So, I don't know if the MLB draft will ever matter to the casual fan. I don't think it will. But I just want to really nip in the bud the fact that it's a crapshoot and really you shouldn't put too much stock in it. Because it does very much matter. Yeah. Especially if you get the first 5 picks.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right. And I think the Reds are in a very unique position with the 2 guys we took last night. Where they both could start as high as high A and then maybe even get up to double A as quickly as, in the next couple months. Rhett Lauder was, outside of Paul Skeens, who was pitching in a world of his own this year with over 200 strikeouts, Rhett Lauder was the best pitcher in college baseball. I mean, an ERA right in the 1.8s, pitched over 120 innings. Like, there's nothing not to love about that guy. He seems like he'll be able to slide into that rotation maybe as quick as late next year. Like, I mean, he's an unbelievable talent. And then the kid from LSU, we've had good luck, first-round picks, number 9 out of LSU in Cincinnati.
Right.
So maybe he has a fastball that advanced metrics love, so maybe he can bleed into that bullpen pretty quickly too. I don't know. It's, never want to get too excited about the Reds on a draft night because, like Elliot said, you don't see these guys for, 3-4 years, maybe not even for your team. But if there is a group to get excited about, it's the 3 guys we took last night.
Yeah, had a great draft, right? It was
phenomenal draft.
Fantastic. I'm looking at Reds draft choices, first-round draft choices since we'll say 2004 because that's a notable name. They took Homer Bailey in 2004, followed it up with Jay Bruce, Drew Stubbs, Devin Mazzaracco, Todd Frazier, Yonder Alonso, Mike Leake, Brad Boxberger, Yasmani Grandal, Robert Stevenson, and then a couple misses. Jesse Winker, Phillip Ervin, Michael Lorenzen, Alex Blandino, Tyler Stevenson, Nick Senzel. These players play in the MLB. Simple as that. They will. So we will see these guys, maybe not in a Reds uniform. Maybe they'll be traded down the line. But at some point, Rhett Lauder will be pitching Major League Baseball games more likely than not.
He'll replace Jonathan India's hair nicely.
I don't know if this is the breaking news that Everett is referring to here, but Sean Casey's going to be the Yankees' next hitting coach.
Nice.
So that's a little
nice.
Fun. There, I'm sure that is.
Did Sean Casey's? I wonder if his son's up for the draft this year. Plays over at Kent State. Kent State had a kid get selected yesterday, a pitcher, like one of the last few picks. So shout out to the MAC for that. All right, so Paul.
Oh boy.
Explain this to me like I'm 5. Explain this to the chat like I'm 5. What is going on with
Huggy Bear?
With Huggy Bear?
I mean, it's really as simple as the fact that it sounds like a forced resignation, like he resigned, but it was a forced resignation, and he is claiming that he didn't really resign under his own power, basically. When it all boils down to it, that's the easiest way to put it. Obviously, there's a lot more details to it if you really want to get into all the nitty-gritty, but it is, to be honest, a pretty sad story in my mind because Huggins, he doesn't have the national championship. He doesn't have that championship pedigree, but I would say that he's probably pretty widely regarded as one of the better coaches in college basketball history. And the last month has seen him completely tarnish that reputation. We knew he had problems with drinking and everything going back to his days at UC and the DUI and everything else. Look, we knew that. It's Bob Huggins. We knew it. This was not breaking news. But for him to get in trouble the way he did outside of Pittsburgh, and now for this to go down the way he did, to threaten to sue the university, he wants to be reinstated as the coach. I mean, whether he gets reinstated or not, which I can't see any world where he does, but even if he does, and I just mentioned the drinking. I don't even mention the comments he made on WLW. But, everything combined with what Huggins has done now in the last 2 months to completely destroy all the reputation that he had and everything in college basketball, it's a real shame. It's a real shame to see him go down this way because, for a Hall of Famer and somebody with, like I said, the pedigree of Huggins, it's completely gone.
Could West Virginia, hypothetically speaking, to avoid getting sued about this whole reinstatement, which he's saying that he didn't resign, although he put out a press release where he literally said, I'm resigning for my position.
Explicitly.
So that lawsuit is out the window. But say West Virginia just wants to avoid the lawsuit in its entirety. Could they reinstate him and then fire him for cause? Like, couldn't they just do that?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Couldn't they just do that?
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. It's a real shame because either way, I was reading, I forget who put it out earlier. I think it was somebody from West Virginia put it out. But either way, he's already done so much damage to the program because of guys that have to leave or have to at least make the decision on whether they're going to leave or stay. The transfer portal's already so far down the line that to go and then get a new coach and then have to put the interim tag on a coach and then figure out what players can leave and stay and get new guys. The whole thing's a mess. When something like this happens at the end of June, it's a mess. It can't happen at the end of June. These things, there's a reason the coaching decisions get made at the middle part of April. It's because that's when things are hottest. That's when you want to set your team. That's when you want to make decisions for the next season. You got to get a coaching staff in place and everything. And then you go and you put an interim tag on somebody else. I mean, this just does so much damage for the long-term prospect of a program like West Virginia. That's a pretty prominent program in the Big 12, a pretty good program. It hasn't been that in recent years necessarily, but they are always perennially a NCAA tournament type good team under Huggins. So just not good. Just not good, Reed.
As a UC fan, it's not good. I think it sucks to see this happen to him, to see the career end this way. But in no world, I mean, it's an all-time bad look for him. I mean, in no world, I firmly believe in second chances. I believe in third chances. I believe in infinite chances. But when they pile up like...
Dreamweaver is an example of that.
Huh?
Dreamweaver
is an example of that. You're right. But, I mean, multiple DUIs is where you lose me. I mean, it's a no regard for anybody else. So I think all the players he's had have loved him. I think the coaching staff, I think they've all loved him. I think everybody who meets him loves him. I just think he needs help, and I think he needs to receive it soon. And in no world is he fit to coach a basketball program right now. Certainly not the caliber of West Virginia. So, Bob, I wish you some help, and hopefully some things start to turn around for you. But this is bad.
I mean, take away all the basketball. Is that a guy you want around 18 to 22-year-old kids every day, teaching them how to carry themselves, how to live life? Not a guy I want, leading a group of young men. So there's no way they bring him back.
I like. Didn't he say in one of his press releases that he takes full blame for what he's done and everything like that, and then
Yep.
Then he said I resign, and now he's just like, I didn't say that.
Yeah, I mean,
No, I didn't.
I have a joke to say, but I won't say it here.
It's honestly, you know what it's like, Paul. You'll respect this. It's like George in Seinfeld, George Costanza, when he gets fired and he's like, I didn't quit. I just comes back on Monday, just like, oh, that wasn't me.
Yeah.
Wasn't me.
That's exactly.
I will say the meme of him in the coffin saying, "I'm not dead yet." That was very funny. Did you see that?
No, I did not.
It's on Twitter. He pops out and he's, "I'm not dead yet." That's very funny.
Yeah. Brutal for him. And brutal.
I don't think anything's gonna happen.
No.
I think nothing's gonna happen.
No, it's just sad for it's sad for him. It's sad for the program, for West Virginia too. I mean, it's just a sad situation all around. Sad.
Let's see how we transition this, Reed. I want to see this.
All right, let's go. What would you do, Reed?
What would you do? So I've asked this question. I've put this around, and I would like to get it on tape and like to hear everyone's answer to this. So there's a kid that I know that could very well get drafted here soon. He could be drafted in the MLB draft, pretty late draft. He had a great senior season. He also recently took a really good job, a job that doesn't come around a whole lot, and pays very well for a 23-year-old. So my question to you guys is, your chances of making it to the MLB when you're drafted in the final rounds is incredibly slow. Stories like that happen. Mike Piazza is one. Every once in a while you hear about a 30th round draft choice that has an all-star career. It does happen. But it's very rare. They don't give you a whole lot of opportunities. They normally get you in and out. I remember there was a kid from Hamilton that was an all-star in his league, in his minor leagues, was an all-star, and they released him because he was a 30th round draft choice, and they was just like, all right, it's the end of the rope. You served your time. A lot of players in minor leagues aren't there because they think they're going to make it in the minor majors. They're there so that they can play games in the minor leagues. Your roster fillers, as sad as it is. But the question that I have to you guys is, what would you do? You're 23 years old. You've got, quote-unquote, a dream job, a job that, like I said, doesn't come around, but maybe once a decade. It might not come around again until you're 30 years old plus. Pays very well, well above the median income of a 23-year-old. Like, you're going to be doing very well for yourself as a single 23-year-old. Great job. And it's exactly what you want to be doing in a unique field. Are you taking the job? Or are you going to go, if you get drafted, are you going to go and play minor league baseball for $2,000 for the summer?
Asking it in this room is tough. But I think to the normal, to the average Joe, I would say. I mean, I still think everybody goes and plays professional baseball. Even if there's no chance. I mean, first of all, there's not no chance because you have a chance. You're playing professional baseball. There's at least some chance you're going to make it to the professional level. So I don't know. I would take it. You're 23 years old. There's not a lot of pressure on you. You're on your parents' insurance till 26. We're good. We're flying high.
Let me state this. I'm not going to give the job out because I don't want to out this player, though. If you're from the area, it wouldn't take too much sleuthing to figure it out. But it is a job. It's not like you're selling insurance. It's not like your TQ. It's not just a normal desk job. It is a rare job. It is a very good job. It pays very well. It is an incredibly good job. And like I said, it's not going to come. It's not one that will be available in 2 years. It's going to be available maybe once a decade. These jobs typically go to people that are in their 40s, and he's getting in at 23.
You're given one life. I find it hard to believe that anybody would go against their dream for that opportunity when their dream is right there. When their dream is literally right there, all you have to do is just come here.
I guess the best way that I can give an analogy without fully just laying the job, because this is something it is a very unique field. It's a fun job, right? It is a job where you only have to work. You don't have to work a full 12 months and stuff like that. It would be essentially like getting to come to work at Chatterbox Sports. They say your dream, as we all have had dreams of being high-end media, broadcasting, whatever. Be working at Chatterbox Sports as an intern, making $1,000 or $2,000 with the dream of potentially making it big someday. While also a high school football team wants you to be their head coach and will give you $70,000 to do it. What do you do there? That's the best analogy I can give.
Now, he has a chance of making the majors if he goes to the minor leagues.
Correct.
He's a 0.0% chance of making the majors if he doesn't.
That's right.
So you tell anyone that's 20-something years old, probably just played baseball, this last year, played college baseball, you can't say no to that. You're getting a chance to play in the major leagues.
Right. I think
say no.
When I'm 23, if I was 23, if I was in his exact same if my mental state was the exact same as a 23-year-old, how I was as a 23-year-old, yeah, I'm gonna go professional baseball. But experience just a little bit more life as a 27-year-old and stuff like that. I know I'm gonna think completely differently 10 years from now as I will 20 years from now as I did 10 years ago. If you ask me as a 27-year-old, I think it's a no-brainer. You take the job. I think that. But as a 23-year-old, it's hard to give up on that dream.
Yeah, I think it's really tough asking this room that question because, in a sense, we're all kind of chasing that dream and trying to make it big and whatever we're trying to make it big in. And, this isn't a great analogy, but I talk about it a lot, especially with you guys. I did a year in minor league baseball. It was something that I had worked my whole life. I said I wanted to work in baseball. I wanted to be a Major League Baseball broadcaster. And to do that, you have to work in the minor leagues first. And I did it 2 years ago. I realized pretty quickly that I didn't want to continue in it. I was offered the spot full time, and I said, I like being diverse in what I talk about in sports and doing other things and talking basketball and talking baseball and football and everything else. And I didn't go back. I didn't choose to do it again. I don't see myself – I don't want to rule it out. I don't want to rule it out because you never know what comes open down the line. You never know who retires or what happens. But I don't see myself at least going back into minor league baseball anytime soon or really at any point down the line. But I say this 100%. I do not at all in any way, shape, or form regret that I basically got paid nothing for that summer. I got paid, but it wasn't, paid as an intern, so barely paid. I was barely able to make rent that summer. I don't think I took any profit that summer. And I did it. I was very, very glad I did it. But I realized it wasn't something wasn't something that I wanted to do long term. I didn't want to stay in the minor leagues for 10 years and only hope that I could make it. Because that's the thing is you get to the minor leagues, at least in broadcasting, and it's the same way in as a player. You get to the minor leagues, you know, if you go into business, eventually you're going to get promoted to being the VP. You just hang around long enough, you're going to be the VP of something, right? You're going to be
you're decent at your job. You're right.
You're gonna be promoted just by longevity. You're gonna be promoted to a point where you get paid well enough and you get there. You could work 10 years in the minor leagues, 15 years in the minor leagues in broadcasting, and never get a taste of the majors. You could never even get a fill-in game. I knew so many guys. I still know so many guys that'll work in it for 15, 20 years. The major league guy goes on vacation, or he goes to his son's graduation or his daughter's graduation, whatever it might be, and they don't even get the call to fill in or whatever it is. And it's just like, is that really what you're giving up every single summer to do full time? You know, but as a 24-year-old, when I did that, I am extremely glad I did it. I don't regret for 1 second that I did it.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm him, I'd play baseball. Now, I don't know what this job is, but I would play baseball.
Yeah, you're in the unique camp that I actually wanted to get your perspective, because you essentially had this had this dilemma. I think the biggest question, we got to wrap this show up really quickly. I think the biggest dilemma that you have to overcome is, can you look in the mirror as a 50-year-old and be okay with not playing minor league baseball, not going after you get drafted, not giving it a shot. And if you can get over that, then you take the job. Simple as that. But if you don't think you can, then you gotta give it heck. The good thing is, it's a win-win for him. He's either got a great job as a 23-year-old, or he's gonna play minor league baseball. You can't get it wrong. You truly can't. That was fun. All right. In the vault, the only one I have, let me pull this up. Anyone got a...
Can we all do a bet real quick? Everybody picks a home run derby champion tonight, or right now, so we're going to go around the room. We'll do it draft style. If one of us gets it right, the other ones get water dumped on their head.
No.
All right, reads out. Paul?
That's a no.
You guys stink. I mean, you guys just stink. No fun, unwilling to eat crickets, except for Jacob and Casey. Just stink. All right, that's fine. I'll pick my winner.
I don't even like winner. I don't like when you ask me.
Tough to hair. Quiet. Let me
to dump water on you.
I'm gonna pick Adolis Garcia plus 550 on Betfred Sportsbook. That's my winner, plus 550. These guys are unwilling to have fun, so no punishment. But go ahead and give out a bet.
You got it pulled up right there. I'm going Luis Robert. What's the odds?
Luis Robert is
plus
400.
Plus 400.
400. Luis Robert.
Luis Robert was gonna be my pick. Now I got to go somewhere else.
I'll change mine. There's another guy I like.
Who do you like?
Adley.
You like Adley?
He's from Portland. His dad's pitching. Hometown adjacent.
You love the value.
Love the value with a 50% boost on a competing.
I'm going to totally name drop here. I'm going to do it. I got to know Adley's dad extremely, extremely well that season because they would fly out for homestands. Obviously, they lived out on the West Coast, so they would fly out, and the only way they could watch or do whatever was watch or listen. So whenever he would come in town, I'd go and meet up with them. I mean, he is a truly outstanding human being. His whole family is, and this is going to be awesome. I hope Adley wins. He's not my pick, but I hope he wins.
Do I have to change my pick again so you can take Adley?
No, I'm not taking Adley.
If you want two bets that I love tonight, there's a lot of juice associated with them. Hopefully, Betfred isn't allowing you to parlay these. But I love both Luis Robert and Vladdy Jr. to win their first round. Sorry to Adley. I think Luis Robert's going to beat Adley pretty handily. I think Vladdy Jr. is going to beat Mookie Betts fairly handily. If Betfred allows this to be parlayed, I think it'd be like plus 140, somewhere in that range. I love the Luis Robert and Vladdy Jr. to win the first round. But I like Luis Robert to win the whole thing. So,
how can you not take the over on total distance? 499.5 longest home run. I mean, what are you watching there, hoping for little doink shots over the wall? No.
Rains a lot in Seattle. Thick air.
Wow.
Thick air.
Jacob, water bet. Let's go. Water bet. You got Robert. I got Garcia.
No.
Come on. Somebody do it with me. You guys make this show no fun.
You just want to get wet. Do you want to just go to a water park? Do we just need to go to a water park?
Yeah. Let's go, Jacob. Let's do it.
Yeah.
If it's not our guys, it's a wash. Doesn't even matter.
I mean, last time you roped me into a bet, you didn't even eat a cricket.
I ate the wing. Everybody knows I ate the wing. Stop bringing that up. I ate the wing.
Elliot, we don't even like dumping water on you. Why would we want to get dumped on ourselves?
It's just no fun in this. I try, chat. I'm trying, chat. Nobody wants to do it with me, so can't do it. I'm willing to get wet for Adolis Garcia.
By the way, I like Randy's value, too.
All right, if Adolis doesn't win, you get wet.
No, I'll take
a bet with yourself.
You really want to get wet.
No, I don't. I want
you love getting wet.
I want
you love getting wet. Don't
you love getting wet for Garcia.
Don't you? Against you.
Don't you?
It's you against you.
You guys are over there getting cute, and I don't like it. What'd you say,
It's
Jacob?
you against you.
Huh?
Adolis wins.
No,
You're a dry zebra.
I'll tell you what. If Adolis doesn't beat Randy Arozarena, I'll get wet.
Okay.
Do you want to just get wet?
No, I don't want to. I want the chat to feel something here. If we're just giving out winners, it doesn't even matter. Nobody cares. There has to be something on the line for us.
He loves getting wet and feeling something, don't you?
He does.
I like to have something on the line for the people. I'm a man of the people.
But we still got the crickets right here.
No, well, I'm not that much for the people.
All right. I'm going to pick Julio, hometown.
Okay, so who are our picks?
Everyone.
Casey, who was your pick?
I haven't picked yet.
Oh, I'm sorry, Casey.
So you got Garcia. What did you pick, Jacob?
Luis Robert.
Adley.
Oh.
Adley.
Reed has Luis.
And Reed, what did you pick?
I pick Luis Robert.
I'm
taking
picking
Pete Alonso, the polar bear?
No, I'm picking Vladimir.
All right. Fair enough.
Okay.
On Betfred Sportsbook.
And nothing's on the line for any of us in this room.
They sponsor this show, best sportsbook in the world, right? On the planet.
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 In the history of the world.
History of the world.
Some are saying universe.
Some are saying.
Some are saying.
All right.
Are we going to spin a wheel?
We really got to go, guys. So let's not even do Wheel of Lunch. We can't. We got to get moving.
Oh, okay.
So sorry about it, guys.
We can do it without you.
I don't want to walk off the stat.
But you're not even on the set when we spin the wheel.
Fine, you guys can do it. Casey's got to leave.
Casey's got to go too. We have to end the show.
All right, fine. No wheel.
No wheel.
No wheel. We'll be back on Wednesday, guys. This has been Box Lunch, presented by Betfred Sportsbook. Thanks to the guys. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the home run derby. Anyone going to the game this week? I might go to the Reds-Brewers game. So
see you there,
yeah, hopefully we'll see. Should be a great series. See you guys.